Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Repkina. On April 17, 2017, a caretaker named Russell found a dead body in the Oregon forest. The woman was Anna Repkina, a Russian native who had been shot in the head and had various trash around her body. Russell reported the discovery to the police. Anna Alexieva Repkina, from Chelyabinsk, Russia, came from a respectable family. She was intelligent, hardworking, and had a passion for travel, rock music, cats, and capturing memories through photography. Anna valued love and longed to be loved in return. She aspired to get married, have children, and build a family home. Those who knew her still cherished the memory of her infectious sense of humor, which made her a joy to be around. In 2016, Anna's 7-year relationship with her high school sweetheart came to an end, leaving her heartbroken. However, she refused to give up on her dreams of finding true love. With online dating becoming increasingly popular, Anna decided to take a chance and signed up for several websites. It was on a Russian dating site that she matched with someone who seemed to fit her ideal perfectly. His name was William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. Interestingly, William had a strong affinity for Russian culture, and he claimed to have fallen for Anna as well. William treated Anna with kindness, frequently praising her. Despite being physically distant, he made an effort to be emotionally present when she needed him. His friends described him as a charismatic, passionate, and likable individual with a great sense of humor. He was a driven person who inspired those around him to pursue their goals. According to his former roommate, William had a remarkable ability to talk his way in or out of any situation. Anna and William communicated daily, and their online relationship rapidly became serious over a few months. They seemed destined to be together, sharing a deep connection. Their common interests, such as enjoying live music and having a similar sense of humor, made them a perfect match, as observed by their friends. Anna and William were very compatible. William was extremely sweet. Despite being separated by continents, he would frequently send her flowers. Soon, they started discussing meeting in person. In December 2016, they decided to take their months-old relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to see William. However, Anna made a mistake on her first attempt. She accidentally booked a ticket for Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time she realized her error, she had already flown to Maine. Still, she was determined to spend the Christmas holidays with her boyfriend. She corrected her flight issues and arrived in Oregon on time. William picked her up from the airport. Anna and William shared 10 wonderful days together. He took her on guided tours, and they explored the seaside, played in the snow, and snuggled up by the fireplace. He introduced her to his friends, making their time together even more special. As the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, they joyfully shouted, "Happy New Year," and shared a romantic kiss. For both of them, it was the perfect Christmas, and they both felt they were meant to be together. After Anna's 10-day visit came to an end, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. From that moment on, the two were engaged. However, what Anna was unaware of was that William had been unfaithful to her. He had been secretly involved with Michelle Chavez, his 33-year-old landlady, who was already married with 2 children. William had been renting a room in Michelle's home, and their affair had been ongoing for over a year, even before Anna's visit. In reality, Anna had unknowingly met Michelle, who was posing as William's landlady, and was in fact William's romantic rival. Michelle was aware that her boyfriend, William, had brought his girlfriend, Anna, to her home. She didn't confront them, possibly thinking that William would never leave her or that Anna was insignificant, just like her own husband. Whatever her reason, she kept quiet. However, things became clearer when Michelle discovered the engagement ring. Anna, thrilled with the news, posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, thanks to the algorithm. Michelle was furious, not just because William was engaged to another woman, but because she had planned to leave her husband for him. In a bold move, Michelle took off her wedding ring and handed it to William. The ring was identical to Anna's engagement ring. It was the same one William had recycled. Michelle expressed her anger to William, who repeatedly assured her that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement on March 1st, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Oregon, preparation in full swing. She had packed her wedding dress in a suitcase and had even resigned from her job, ready to start a new life with her fiancé, William. Michelle grew concerned about the seriousness of Anna and William's relationship, so she decided to intervene. One day, she reached out to Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on. Anna then reported back to William about the conversation with Michelle. However, William dismissed Michelle's concerns, attributing them to jealousy as his ex. Despite this, the couple was determined to move forward with their plans, ignoring Michelle's warnings. They proceeded to schedule their wedding for March 23rd, planning to exchange vows by the seaside. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach for the ceremony. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home, deciding to try again in April. William consistently made it clear to Anna that she was insignificant to him and that he didn't love her. However, Anna refused to accept this. Michelle grew tired of the situation and decided to intervene. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum. He had to choose between her and Anna. He couldn't continue to lead both women on. Michelle also issued a stark warning. If Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action. Building a snowman was a sinister euphemism for killing someone and hiding their body in a location where it would remain frozen and undiscovered. After Michelle clearly expressed her feelings to William, she was unable to reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna over her. The next day, Sunday the 16th of April, Michelle left voicemails for William in an attempt to convey her emotions. However, William called Michelle to inform her that he was single again, having ended his relationship with Anna. The breakup was messy, but Anna was in the process of returning to Russia. As it happened, William's car had collided with a deer, leaving him stranded at the Ali Murtal store. He asked Michelle to meet him there, which she agreed to, despite being in the middle of a family gathering on Easter Sunday. Michelle left her family's house and drove to the store, where she and William reconnected. They celebrated their rekindled relationship by having sex in William's car on the 17th of April. Anna's body was discovered in the forest at the start of the investigation into her death. The investigators had no idea who she was, as there was no identification on her, and she had only been in the state for about a month. There was no sign of a murder weapon, only litter scattered around her. However, among the trash, a clear plastic bag caught their attention, containing a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken bag. The KFC receipt was the crucial piece of evidence, bearing a date, time, and debit card number. The debit card was traced back to Kevin Thomas, who was subsequently tracked down by the investigators. Kevin revealed that he and William had a weekly habit of getting lunch at KFC every Friday, and the receipt was from a purchase about a week before his questioning. Kevin had been the one to expose William's complicated romantic relationships. The investigation into Anna's death was the only reason William's infidelity had ever come to light. Kevin also recalled that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to blow off some steam. After obtaining Kevin's statement, the police shifted their focus to William and Michelle. William's behavior became increasingly suspicious, as he was caught on camera in stores where he had purchased cigars and Star Wars Legos. He even confided in Kevin that he was splurging on things he couldn't afford in an attempt to lift his spirits. On the 16th, William broke down in tears in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had just dumped him. However, William had actually moved back in with Michelle, and when questioned by the police about his whereabouts on the 16th of April, he falsely stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. When asked about his relationship with Anna, William denied any romance, saying he had met her in Corvallis while out walking, went on 2 dates, but realized it wouldn't work out between them, which ended things between them. William said the last time he saw Anna was in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused trouble for him with his actual partner, Michelle. William was questioned about trash near his late fiancée, Anna Repkina's body. He confessed to littering, but claimed he'd thrown KFC trash away 40 miles from the scene. Investigators were skeptical. When told his trash was found near another murder victim, William was shocked, then asked for a lawyer. He was arrested April 19th for Anna's murder. Michelle was questioned after William's arrest. Initially, she stuck to their rehearsed story, saying they spent the day together. However, under continued questioning, she admitted lying and gave a new account, claiming William was supposed to call and pick her up, but never did. Later, when Michelle was being questioned by the police, they told her that her boyfriend of a year and a half was being held in custody on suspicion of murder. Her response was a simple, "Okay." The investigator found this reaction suspicious and highlighted it, which caused Michelle's emotions to become visible. She started to whimper and attributed her initial lack of reaction to being in a state of shock. William Hargrove was facing trial in October 2019 for murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft, charges that were filed in June 2018. The prosecution sought to have William convicted on all counts, while the defense argued that he was innocent and that Melissa, his burnt lover, was the actual perpetrator. However, the prosecution presented strong evidence against William, highlighting his motive and guilt. It was revealed that William had a second lover, Michelle, who was pressuring him to choose between her and Anna. Furthermore, evidence showed that William had driven with Anna, and his cell phone records placed him near the scene of the crime on the day of her murder, at 4:30 p.m. on Logging Road. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with only his fingerprints on the weapon. Moreover, despite claiming to have no involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to pay off his car insurance, make ATM withdrawals, and go shopping. The prosecution alleged that William had taken Anna to the forest, shot and killed her, and then used her money to pay off his debts, all because he was choosing between Anna and Michelle. The defense argued that their client was innocent and pointed to Melissa as the prime suspect. According to them, Melissa had motives to harm Anna, having previously threatened to build a snowman with her. Furthermore, Melissa's cell phone had been found on the Logging Road just weeks before Anna's murder, suggesting she had likely been in the area to plan the crime. When searched, Melissa's house yielded Anna's cell phone, which implicated her further. Despite this, Melissa was not charged with any crimes and was called as a witness for the prosecution. Melissa took the stand to testify about her relationships, including how she met William and the dynamics between them. As a late-night cab driver, she had met William at the bar where he worked. With her husband's knowledge and consent, she started an affair with William, which grew intense over time. Eventually, William even rented a room in her house to be closer to her. Both her marriage and her relationship with William were open, meaning they allowed each other to have outside relationships. When Anna first appeared, Melissa wasn't interested. However, by Anna's second visit, which seemed like it would be a long-term stay, Melissa was upset, particularly after seeing her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although Melissa had given William an ultimatum, she was not involved in his harming Anna. She claimed she never intended for Anna to get hurt or, worse, lose her life. Melissa continued to defend herself against the defense's allegations. The threat about building a snowman was a joke, albeit an extreme one, which was a family joke. Her cell phone was indeed found in the forest, but William had driven her there. She had no idea why he did so or what he was planning. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by the authorities. Melissa's testimony lasted for 14 hours. Besides Melissa, around 70 other people gave testimony, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, as well as some of Melissa's family members. In her hometown in Oregon, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, with locals criticizing and bullying her. At one point, she even attempted to take her own life, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. Prosecutor praised Melissa's efforts, calling them tough, super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver a verdict. They deliberated for under 3 hours, finding no evidence linking Michelle to Anna's death, unlike William, and clearing her alibi. William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence proved conclusive, and he was found guilty on all counts, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. His attorney, however, announced plans to file an appeal. The jurors in Anna's case developed a strong bond during the trial. After the verdict, they were escorted to the logging trail, the site where Anna's body was found, to pay their respects. Anna will be remembered as a brave young woman who left her Russian homeland to build a new life in the United States. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The shocking case of Valerie Reyes. One day, during a normal highway patrol check, the police officers found a bright red suitcase on the roadside among the trash and dry grass. They thought someone had left it behind by mistake, but their gut feeling told them something was not right. They slowly opened the suitcase and were shocked to see the twisted body of a young woman in an unnatural position. This discovery made the experienced officers realize that the victim had come across the aftermath of a horrible crime. Valerie Reyes, who was 24 years old, experienced a truly horrific death. She was raised in a comfortable suburb close to New York, within a loving family, and was the focal point of attention for her 3 younger brothers. Valerie had close and trusting bonds with her brothers since their early years. Valerie was known for her cheerful attitude, heartfelt smile, and knack for forming connections with others. It was not unexpected that she always had a large group of friends around her. Her bond with her mother was particularly strong. They confided their deepest secrets in each other and sought advice on everything, much like best pals. Her mother prioritized her daughter's happiness and peace of mind above all else. Valerie had many talents. She was great at drawing, singing, and aspired to be a professional tattoo artist. With her older brother's help, who was already successful in this area, she studied tattoo art diligently. They aimed to open a tattoo parlor together to realize their creative ideas. Valerie also worked part-time in a quaint bookstore where a vibe of knowledge and creativity always lingered. In January of 2018, Valerie's life took an unexpected turn when she encountered Javier Dilva, a charming 26-year-old Venezuelan who had recently relocated to New York on a popular dating platform. Javier shared his compelling narrative of fleeing his crisis-stricken homeland to safeguard his own life, a journey that had led him to abandon his collegiate pursuits. Presently, Javier devoted himself to forging a fresh start in a foreign land by toiling diligently in a restaurant. Valerie empathized with the young man who had found himself ensnared in dire circumstances. As they embarked on a series of dates, romantic sentiments blossomed swiftly between them, propelling their relationship into a tumultuous whirlwind. Despite its intensity, the liaison endured for a mere 3 months. Javier's attitude, with his early mentions of marriage, made Valerie uncomfortable. She realized their relationship was moving too quickly for her liking. Valerie decided to end things with Javier, a choice he found hard to come to terms with. At first, Valerie's family liked Javier because he seemed to care about her well-being and happiness. But when he found out she wanted to break up, he started acting very differently. Javier didn't want to accept that their relationship was over, so he kept trying to get back together with her. He sent her lots of messages, arranged to see her in public, and begged her to give their relationship another chance. In September 2018, Javier contacted Valerie claiming he mistakenly used her bank card for an online transaction and needed to meet urgently to repay her. Valerie suspected Javier had hidden intentions, so she asked a trusted friend for help. That friend intervened and put a stop to Javier bothering her. With the unwanted attention gone, Valerie felt relieved and could go back to her usual routine. She found joy in simple things and had big dreams for the future. She had no idea that the worst was yet to come. On January 24, 2019, a strange incident occurred. Javier wrote to his longtime acquaintance, claiming that he caught Valerie in bed with another man. This message surprised and angered the girl because it couldn't be true. She and Javier had long since parted ways and had not maintained any contact with each other. Moreover, she had not been to his house for many months. Furthermore, during this period, Valerie had just begun dating another guy. Why would Javier make up such bizarre things? January 27th was a joyful day for Valerie. She happily celebrated her father's birthday with her entire family. It seemed that nothing foreshadowed trouble. But the very next evening, after returning home from her shift at the bookstore, she called her mother in a state close to hysteria. She was crying and screaming into the phone, claiming that someone wanted to kill her. Valerie confessed that she had been suffering from severe anxiety for several days and constantly felt someone's malicious presence. The news she heard about the brutal murders of women in their own homes provoked paranoid thoughts in the girl. She no longer felt safe in her apartment. Trying to calm her daughter, the mother asked if she was afraid of anyone specific, but Valerie could not answer. She just kept sobbing into the phone. After a long conversation, Valerie seemed to feel better. They agreed that the next day her mother would definitely come and stay with her daughter until she felt better. Before going to bed, Valerie sent her mother a message saying that she had already calmed down and was going to sleep. She had no idea that these would be her last words to her loved one. The next morning, January 29th, the worried mother was waiting for a call from her daughter, but she remained silent. Attempts to call Valerie's cell phone were futile. After a few rings, the voicemail would turn on. Closer to noon, she decided to go to her daughter's apartment and personally make sure that she was all right. At work, Valerie was also awaited in vain. Usually punctual and diligent, this time Valerie did not show up for her shift and did not notify anyone about her absence. She had never done this before, as she greatly valued her job and the team at the bookstore, where she had already worked for about 2 years. The perplexed manager tried to call Valerie, but to no avail. The phone was turned off. Anxiety rapidly engulfed the entire family. Valerie did not come to the dinner she had been eagerly awaiting and planning just yesterday. Her relatives called her number again and again, but kept encountering a wall of silence. Each time they recalled the recent worrying conversation and felt fear gripping their hearts with its cold fingers. On the morning of January 30th, they went to the police and filed a missing person report for Valerie. The investigators' first suspicion fell on her ex-boyfriend, Javier, whose ill intentions the family immediately informed them about. A thorough search of Valerie's apartment did not yield any significant leads. There were no signs of a struggle or any indication that the girl had been taken by force. The only unusual detail was small bloodstains on a pillowcase in the bathroom. But the police assumed that this could be the result of an ordinary cut or nosebleed. The police immediately started looking for the missing girl. They got in touch with her mobile service provider and discovered that Valerie's phone was put on airplane mode on January 28th at around 3 a.m. Ever since then, the phone had not been turned on. However, the most concerning discovery was that someone had accessed Valerie's cloud storage and thoroughly examined all her photos, videos, and messages. It appeared that the intruder was searching for specific information. Another worrying detail was that at 5 a.m. on January 29th, just 2 hours after the phone was turned off, $1,000 was withdrawn from Valerie's bank account. A man was recorded on a surveillance camera driving a black Honda to an ATM, taking money, and then leaving quickly. Valerie was not seen nearby. The car's license plate number led law enforcement to Javier, who was the ex-boyfriend of the missing girl's mother. He became a prime suspect. Although no direct evidence was found linking him to Valerie's disappearance during a search of his house, surveillance footage showed him leaving his home in a black Honda and heading towards his ex-girlfriend's residence on January 28th. Investigators checked Valerie's phone and found no recent calls or messages from Javier. She had not invited him over or arranged to meet, so why was he there at night without warning or invitation? Even more suspicion was aroused by Javier's odd behavior. Immediately after these events, he turned off his phone, making it impossible to track his movements. At 6 a.m., his phone briefly turned on near Harrison, Connecticut. At 7:30, it was detected in Greenwich, and only at 9:43 did Javier return home to Queens. This was confirmed by cameras near his house. He returned wearing different clothes than the previous night and carried a small sports bag that he took into the house, emerging without it a few minutes later. All of this greatly alarmed the detectives. Later, they discovered another detail. The evening before Valerie's disappearance, Javier posted an old photo of them together on Instagram. Why did he do this? The police were making progress in the investigation, and Valerie's relatives and friends were still searching for her. They put up posters, asked people if they had seen her, and checked all the places she usually went. Unfortunately, none of these efforts helped find her. A week passed in anxious anticipation, filled with sleepless nights and exhaustive searches. Then, on February 5th, an unexpected breakthrough occurred. Highway workers noticed a red suitcase on the roadside, sparking their worst suspicions. Upon opening it, they discovered the mutilated body of a young woman. Her hands and feet were tightly bound with rope, her mouth sealed with duct tape, and her clothing torn and dirty. Despite the horrific condition of her body, the deceased was identified as Valerie Rees, who had gone missing the day before. Her parents recognized their beloved daughter. The autopsy revealed chilling details of the murder. Valerie had suffered a severe blow to the head with a blunt object. She was then stuffed into a suitcase while still alive and left to die. The last minutes of Valerie's life, locked in a cramped space, were filled with unbearable pain and despair. She died slowly and agonizingly from lack of oxygen. All the evidence pointed to the involvement of Javier in this brutal murder. Proving his guilt was not easy. The only direct evidence was Valerie's bank card found in his wallet. During the interrogation, he claimed that he found Valerie's card and her ID in a bar by chance. This story sounded implausible and raised even more questions. The investigators presented Javier with all the information they had gathered: video from surveillance cameras, details of his car and phone movements on that fateful night. They assured him that they were aware of his presence at Valerie's house. At this point, he changed his testimony. He admitted that he was very drunk that evening and might have indeed gone to Valerie's place, but he remembered nothing. However, when the detective showed him photos of his ex-girlfriend's mutilated body in the suitcase, Javier could not bear it and burst into tears. He started speaking unclearly and with confusion, attempting to explain himself. He claimed that he visited Valerie at her request that evening. They engaged in sexual activity, although it was rough. At one stage, Valerie fell, hitting her head on the floor, and lost consciousness. Javier insisted that he wanted to help his beloved. He performed artificial respiration and cardiac massage on her, but it was all in vain. Frightened that he might be accused of murder, he tried to hide the traces of the crime. He tied up Valeria, sealed her mouth with duct tape, put her in a suitcase, and took her out of town. He allegedly did all this in a state of passion, not realizing what he was doing. When the investigators asked him why he tied up and gagged an already motionless, possibly dead girl, Javier could not answer. Then an utterly incredible story began. He claimed that he deliberately used Valerie's card to get into the police's field of vision as quickly as possible. In his opinion, this should have facilitated the investigation. Then Javier spent another $4,350 from the victim's account. During searches of the suspect's home, Valerie's phone and laptop, which he had managed to take, were also found. Javier tried to destroy them by throwing them into the river, but then for some reason returned and retrieved the items. Javier gained access to Valerie's cloud storage thanks to her fingerprint, which he took from the already dead girl. This allowed him to enter the application that shows the balance of her bank card. For the investigators, this whole story sounded extremely unconvincing and confusing. There were too many inconsistencies and accidental coincidences in it. They immediately suspected Javier of the intentional, planned murder of Valerie and provided strong evidence of his guilt. Javier's testimony finally fell apart after the results of a thorough examination of the deceased body. There were signs of struggle and violence on her. Under her nails, the skin and blood of the killer were found. His fingerprints were found on her neck and chest. Javier's DNA was everywhere, on the suitcase, in the car's interior, and on the victim's belongings. It became clear that he had thoughtfully and consistently committed this terrible crime. The suspect was immediately arrested and officially charged with the brutal murder of Valerie Reyes. Under the pressure of irrefutable evidence, Javier da Silva eventually fully admitted his guilt in court. On February 5, 2020, a hearing was held in the case of the intentional murder of 24-year-old Valerie Reyes. In his speech, the prosecutor drew the jurors' attention to the defendant's planned, consistent actions, to how he monitored the victim's every move, obsessively stalked her, and then brutally dealt with her. During the court session, Javier had to listen to many angry accusations from Valerie's grief-stricken loved ones. Her mother's speech was especially emotional. She could not hold back her tears and barely spoke through her sobs. The woman called her daughter's killer a real monster, selfish, soulless, and cruel. Javier's lawyers tried to justify his actions as a sudden outburst of anger and jealousy. They talked about the defendant's difficult childhood, his depressive state after breaking up with Valeria, and his use of drugs shortly before the tragedy. They claimed that all this affected his emotional state and pushed him to the fatal decision. They even read out a few letters from former friends from Venezuela who characterized Javier as a sensitive and decent guy who simply stumbled in life. But these attempts had no influence on the opinion of the jurors. On September 3, 2021, the court passed a sentence of 30 years in prison for 28-year-old Javier da Silva. This effectively meant most of his life behind bars. The investigation also found out that the defendant was illegally staying in the United States. He had arrived in the country back on May 8, 2017, under the visa waiver program, but the allowed 90-day period of stay expired on August 5th of the same year. Javier ignored this requirement and continued to remain in the States, contrary to the law. So after serving his 30-year sentence, he will be immediately deported to his homeland, Venezuela, and there most likely another trial awaits him. The death of Valerie Reyes came as a real shock to her loved ones. They had no idea that an ordinary acquaintance on social networks could lead to such a terrible tragedy. This high-profile case made many people think about the dangers of virtual relationships and the threats lurking in the real world. Valerie will forever remain in the memory of her loved ones as a bright, cheerful, and devoted girl whose life was cut short too early and cruelly. I hope this story left no one indifferent. On July 4, 2009, several faculty members from the finance department of Chinese University gathered to work overtime. They needed to manage and track the school's finances and expenses from the previous semester. Among them was supposed to be 43-year-old Tan Chenghui, a faculty member whom many expected to be present. Yet, he was absent. A colleague known as Ma attempted to reach Chenghui on his mobile phone at 11 a.m. Unfortunately, there was no answer. Given the heavy workload, Ma couldn't get too concerned and initially wasn't worried. He knew that Chenghui's family had recently adopted a stray dog suffering from a skin disease. Chenghui had planned to take the dog to the vet, so Ma assumed that's where he might have been. On July 5th, the university's finance department held another meeting, but again Cheng Hui failed to show up. Ma tried calling his mobile phone once more, but still received no response. Not knowing Cheng Hui's landline number prevented further attempts at contact. By July 6th, Cheng Hui hadn't shown up for work for 2 days and had not communicated with any co-workers. Eventually, one colleague reported his absence to the university's finance department. Fortunately, his superiors knew Cheng Hui's house landline number and tried calling it, again with no success. Concerned about his prolonged absence, they reached out to the library where his 33-year-old wife, Tang Anyi, worked. According to library staff, she too was absent without having booked any days off. Originally from Zhongshan, in Guangdong province of mainland China, Cheng Hui and Tang Anyi were married for 11 years and had 2 daughters, 10-year-old Tan Zai and 7-year-old Tan Zai. Both daughters shared the same name. Although their living conditions were modest, they resided in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road. The family was described as kind-hearted and cheerful individuals whose children were well-behaved. Cheng Hui frequently took his daughters into town for leisure activities, which led some to speculate that perhaps the family decided on an impromptu vacation but encountered unforeseen circumstances delaying their return. This unusual situation called for further investigation and warranted greater concern within their academic community. His colleagues spent a significant period repeatedly calling both his mobile and house phone, hoping for a different outcome. After some time, someone did answer. However, it was not a family member. Instead, an unfamiliar man with a middle-aged voice responded. He introduced himself as Cheng Hui's cousin, stating that the family had left for Dongduan in Guangdong province for summer vacation. According to him, Cheng Hui had entrusted his personal phone to him for safekeeping. When asked about the family's return to Hong Kong, the man was vague and eventually hung up after repeated questioning, then turned off the mobile phone. This call only heightened the suspicion and concern among Cheng Hui's co-workers. Cheng Hui had always been diligent and conscientious, never leaving work without a valid reason. If he were to take a vacation with his children, he would have arranged matters with their school beforehand. Additionally, the family cared for 9 stray dogs, raising questions about who would look after them during their trip to mainland China and how they could afford such a vacation. Cheng Hui had lived with his parents. His father was a sailor while his mother worked at a paper mill. His father's mysterious disappearance led to his mother's deteriorating health and eventual move to a nursing home. Cheng Hui regularly visited her weekly, making it out of character for him to suddenly abandon these responsibilities. Consequently, they decided to contact the police. One of his colleagues guided the police to Cheng Hui's residence, located at an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. On their way there, they noticed an unexpected event. A short man was seen near the Tan family's fence, but quickly vanished from sight. Initially dismissing this sighting as inconsequential, they proceeded to their destination. Upon reaching Cheng Hui's home gate, they discovered it locked. The police then surveyed the property and began questioning neighbors. The abandoned recycling station spans nearly 450 square meters, with only 90 square meters constructed upon. Around 350 square meters are unoccupied flower beds. The building itself was illegally constructed. The original owner had haphazardly built several tin houses on the premises for waste recycling purposes, while another stone structure functioned as a pig farm. Given that virtually no one resided there, the police found only one neighbor available for questioning, an elderly woman named Wang, who lived alone across the street. Wang mentioned she had resided in the area for quite some time and knew their daily schedules somewhat, particularly that they usually attended to their garden in the afternoons, but beyond this knowledge, she was not privy to details about their personal lives. She noted that, due to the remote location, relatives seldom visited the family. The only acquaintance she knew of was Cheng Hui's middle-aged cousin, who went by Zhu. Wang was not informed of any mentions of suicide. She only knew that Cheng Hui's uncle lived nearby in a stone house. A colleague of Shang Hui told the police that when he called Cheng Hui's phone, it was answered by his cousin. The police assumed the person on the other end was Zhu. Wang didn't know Zhu's or the uncle's address, but she did hear cries for help from their house on July 5th. Consequently, officers were dispatched to conduct door-to-door inquiries in Pingqi village. Investigators later located a man at a stone house at 74 Huaju Road. He identified himself as 42-year-old Zhu Shenqi and confirmed he was Cheng Hui's cousin. He mentioned that he frequently visited the family home to assist with renovations and garden work. When questioned about the phone call, he insisted that the family was on vacation in China. According to him, Cheng Hui visited his mother at a nursing home on July 5th before returning home and informing him of his plan to travel to Dongguan, China for a few days. To avoid expensive roaming fees for his Hong Kong mobile phone in mainland China, he had asked Zhu Shenqi to keep it until he returned. The person observed by police and Cheng Hui's colleague leaving hurriedly was actually Zhu after feeding the family dogs. Zhu Shenqi appeared calm during his interaction with investigators. There were no notable inconsistencies in his account. When asked if he possessed a key to the family home, he said he did not. Despite locating Zhu Shenqi, police continued their door-to-door investigations. Some villagers claimed that a few days earlier, a stranger had borrowed money from a female villager and later had an intense confrontation where she threatened to collect the debt from Cheng Hui's home if unpaid when his mother was hospitalized since she owed money too. However, this stranger wasn't Zhu Shenqi. Nonetheless, speculation arose suggesting that perhaps the family went into hiding to evade debts and misled their cousin about their whereabouts in China. Or so they thought. When the police asked the villagers about Shenqi, that's when they learned he had lied. The villagers that Shenqi regularly visited the area to maintain and work on the home. He always managed to open the gate and door by himself, even when no one else was home. This led the police to conclude that he must have had a key or some kind access to the property. In fact, he did. Wang witnessed Cheng Hui hand over the key to Shenqi. This key was left at the university office, with instructions for Shenqi to pick it up. Wang also saw this exchange. The police then returned to Shenqi's home and asked for the key. Once again, he denied owning one and claimed he used a spare during renovations, which he supposedly returned, leaving him without access. Shenqi appeared far less composed compared to his previous questioning sessions. He deliberately avoided key details. So when police threatened to search his home, Shenqi panicked and suddenly remembered another house key he hadn't returned. He retrieved it from his dresser and handed it over to the authorities. Despite his suspicious behavior, there wasn't direct evidence linking him to the family's disappearance, so they put him under surveillance while continuing their investigation. Using this spare key, investigators entered the home, which was in complete disarray and had clearly been ransacked. They found several fresh bloodstains on the walls, indicating that someone had likely been killed on the property. In the kitchen, police discovered a sink full of dirty dishes, a clear contradiction to any claim that they had gone to China, as they would not have left their home in such a mess before leaving. Inside the couple's master bedroom, they found family ID cards in a dresser drawer. The head investigator contacted border crossing authorities, who confirmed that no member of the family had left Hong Kong. Continuing their search, they found a blood-stained shirt in a side room and a blood-stained plastic hollow water pipe in a corner of another room. Sniffer dogs were brought in for further clues. The dogs picked up a scent and found blood stains under freshly turned soil 99 meters away from the house. Despite it being summer vacation, it was known that Cyan and Zion, the daughters, had signed up for summer school classes, meaning they wouldn't be on vacation either. It became clear that foul play was involved concerning what happened to this family. Soon after, a dedicated task force was created specifically for investigating this case, but no further investigation took place immediately due to how late it was, so authorities just cordoned off Pingqi village's entrances and exits, while placing Shenki under house arrest as their primary suspect. Shenki soon admitted his actions. He stated he was from Huangpu, Guangdong province. He lived with his sister, wife, and 2 sons, aged 15 and who suffered from memory issues. Shenki previously made a living through motorcycle sales in Junction City. However, the 2006 ban on motorcycles in Guangdong affected his sales and income drastically. Struggling financially, he reached out to his cousin, Tan Changi, in Hong Kong for assistance in finding work there. Shang Hui managed to secure Shenki a construction job that paid a daily salary of 500 Hong Kong dollars with board and lodging included. After working for half a month, Shenki felt frustrated with his pay since company deductions left him with only 220 Hong Kong dollars. Annoyed and dispirited, he quit without notice and went back to China. In 2007, Typhoon Pabuk caused extensive damage to his home. Faced with hefty repair costs, Shenki sought employment help from Cheng Hui in Hong Kong again. This time, Shang Hui couldn't find available jobs but offered to pay Shenki from his own salary if Shenki helped work on Hui's home. Shenki accepted the offer. Under this deal, every other month, Shenki would travel to Hong Kong for various tasks around the household like gardening and repairs. As per Shenki's account, an affair began between him and Cheng Hui's wife during this period. On July 3rd, Cheng Hui discovered the affair. On July 5th, while visiting a nursing home with Cheng Hui's wife to see her mother-in-law, Shenki snuck back home to continue the affair. Cheng Hui unexpectedly returned early and furiously confronted him. According to Shenki, seeing murderous intent in Cheng Hui's eyes drove him to desperation. He grabbed a 25-centimeter fruit knife and fatally stabbed Cheng Hui repeatedly until he fell into a pool of blood. Shenki was understandably frightened by what had just occurred and intended to report it to the authorities. Nevertheless, Shenki mentioned he couldn't allow that to transpire, so since he couldn't convince Cheng Hui's wife, he resolved to eliminate her as well. He located some wires in the room's corner, rushed at her, knocked her down, bound her hands behind her back, her mouth and nose with tape, and a plastic bag over her head. Meanwhile, their 2 children were in a bedroom watching cartoons. She screamed for them to flee, but instead, they ran towards their mother and found their father deceased and Shenki in the process of killing their mother. They retreated to their room, crying and locking the door. Given she was already restrained, Shenki left Cheng Hui's wife momentarily and pursued the children. Their cries were overheard by a neighbor. Using a pair of pliers, Shenki forced open the door and tied their hands behind their backs with wires too, taped over their mouths and noses, and covered their heads with plastic bags as well. Returning to Cheng Hui's wife after securing the children, who also soon suffocated, he found she had finally stopped breathing. After killing the entire family, Shenki was uncertain about his next steps. He went back home to ponder his options. Shenki considered that hiding the bodies in a ditch or water might make them too easily discoverable, and that dismembering them would be very taxing and time-consuming. He decided on burying them on their own property instead. On July 6th, Shenki returned to the house intending to clean up as many bloodstains as possible before digging a hole deep and wide enough for 4 bodies. He quickly placed all 4 family members inside it, along with the murder tools. Sharp knife, water pipe, iron pliers, then covered it all up. The police were skeptical about his motives but believed his account overall. They escorted Shenki back to the scene where he identified for them where he'd buried everything used for committing these crimes. On July 7th, they contacted the fire department for assistance with exhuming the remains. The firefighters arrived equipped with excavation tools and wore gas masks since the bodies were near a septic tank. They commenced digging but soon encountered an issue. They hit cement. Shenki, during his confession, omitted a key detail. He had filled the pit with cement before covering it back up. The thickness of the cement was unknown, and it had hardened, rendering their tools ineffective in breaking through. Consequently, the police brought in a private engineering company. This company utilized high-grade tools to begin drilling through the concrete. However, the engineering team had weak stomachs. Upon drilling through and discovering human hair, they lost their nerve and refused to continue, as they did not wish to see a dead body. The police took 13 hours to convince them to proceed. Once fully excavated, they found the pit measured 2.54 meters wide and 6 feet deep. At the bottom lay the 4 bodies of the family members, barefoot and clad in just t-shirts and shorts. Cheng Hui's body was at the very bottom, with his hands and feet bound by electric wire and multiple stab wounds on his abdomen, back and neck. His clothes were stained with blood. And Enzio's knees, hands, and feet were also tied up with electric wire. A wire was wrapped around her neck, while her mouth and nose were sealed with yellow tape. Zion's mouth and nose were covered with tape, her hands and feet were bound, her face appeared distorted. Similarly, Xiaowang's face was contorted, her hands and feet were tied up, her mouth and nose sealed, her eyes were covered with transparent tape. Both Enzio and Enzio displayed no overt signs of trauma, leading police to believe they might have been buried alive. Shanky was formally arrested and during interrogation altered his confession. He retracted his initial claim about an affair but admitted attempting to initiate one. And Enzio felt uncomfortable and informed Cheng Hui about Shanky's behavior. Enraged, Cheng Hui expelled Shanky from their home and prohibited him from returning. Subsequently, Shanky revisited the home to apologize, surprisingly receiving Cheng Hui's forgiveness. On July 3rd, Shanky resumed work at their home when it appeared that their relationship had mended until July 4th, when he again made advances towards an Enzio during Cheng Hui's absence. Attempting to escalate this time by trying to molest an author, and Enzio led her to flee and call for help as she locked herself in a room for safety, to avoid alarming neighbors. In response, and likely panic, Shanky fled the scene in anger. On July 5th, Shanky waited for Cheng Hui to visit his mother at the nursing home. His intention was to force his way into the family home once more, under the pretense of delivering a second apology. Cheng Hui, anticipating such an attempt, wisely returned home early. Upon arrival, he found Shanky on the property, attempting to gain entry to speak with an Enzio again. This encounter quickly escalated into an argument. In a heated, Shanky stabbed Cheng Hui, not in self-defense, but voluntarily. The remainder of Shanky's confession aligned with his initial statements, but included the added detail of filling the makeshift grave with cement. Yet, after the bodies were examined during autopsy, it became evident that Shanky's accounts were incomplete. Cheng Hui's murder was far more savage than described. He had sustained 9 stab wounds to his head and neck, and nearly 80 on his body. Additionally, there were 10 stab wounds on his hands and feet. Rather than being suffocated with a plastic bag as initially claimed, both Cheng Hui and Zion had been strangled. Forensic analysis of the home revealed that none of the cutlery or dishes held the family's DNA. Instead, they bore only Shanky's DNA. It was concluded that Cheng Hui had not been murdered in the kitchen but likely elsewhere in the house. And Enzio did not become aware of these events until she herself was attacked by Shanky next. Furthermore, the weapon used was not from the family's kitchen but one belonging to Shanky himself. The cement used for concealing the bodies had been purchased ahead of time, indicating forethought and planning. The investigation also uncovered evidence that an Enzio's bank cards had been used at ATMs following her death. However, failed attempts to guess her PIN prevented any money from being withdrawn. Moreover, their cash and bank cards were discovered missing, pointing towards robbery as a motive and solidifying premeditation. Throughout this process, whenever discrepancies in his story were highlighted by police officers, Shanky swiftly provided new versions of events. He explained that urgent repairs were needed for his ancestral home in China, amounting to 100,000 in cash, while maintaining financial support for 2 children still at school there as well, both which necessitated significant funds. Because he lacked local favorability back home, it meant borrowing money would likely be denied, and visits previously made to Hong Kong hadn't yielded substantial earnings either. Hence, ultimately turning towards seeking assistance from Cheng Hui seemed like necessary recourse under such pressing circumstances, according to him. Shanky harbored the belief that Cheng Mi was far wealthier than he seemed, and was exploited for cheap labor. On July 3rd, Shanky returned to Hong Kong without informing anyone. He waited until July 5th, when the couple didn't have to work. Concealing a knife, Shanky knocked on the door while Cheng Hui was away at the nursing home. They talked briefly. When Cheng Hui returned and saw Shanky, he asked if there was anything he needed. As they conversed, Annie went to the kitchen. Almost immediately, Shanky asked to borrow 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. Cheng Hui declined because, although he had the money, and even more, he needed it for his mother's treatment and daughter's education. Shanky refused to believe him and accused him of exploiting him for cheap labor. This accusation angered Cheng Hui, who then ordered Shanky to leave. As Cheng Hui turned his back, Shanky attacked him, covering his mouth before stabbing him from behind. He then restrained a terrified Ani and Jiang Wang, searched the home for cash and bank cards, and demanded their passwords. Although Cheng Hui provided a fake password, at that moment, Shanky didn't realize it. Despite this lie about strangling Annie and claiming he killed them by putting tape over their mouths and noses, as well as using plastic bags over their heads, this part being untrue, when Shanky left for the nearest ATM, he found out he had been lied to when the PIN number didn't work. Upon his return home, he discovered they had all suffocated in his absence. Noticing the food Ani had been preparing, he decided to eat it near the 4 corpses while contemplating how to dispose of them. After stealing 6,000 Hong Kong dollars from Cheng Hui's person, he buried the bodies and tools in a small pit before retiring to sleep at his temporary residence. The next morning, he awoke with the grim realization that the bodies might be detected due to the smell seeping from the soil. So he decided to buy cement from a store. After returning home, he dug up the pit he had previously made and poured in the cement before refilling the hole again. He planned to stay at the house for a while to answer calls to Cheng Hui's cell phone or house phone, pretending that he was asked to look after things while they were supposedly on vacation. Shanky mentioned he did not anticipate his deception being uncovered so quickly. Even now, Shanky continued lying about various details, such as claiming he bought the cement before the murder and fabricating causes of Annie and Jiang's deaths. The police, by this point, were no longer interested in extracting a truthful confession since they felt they had sufficient evidence to proceed. The trial took place at the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010. Shanky pleaded not guilty. Maintaining his earlier story about an affair with Annie, he asserted that Cheng Hui was killed in self-defense and claimed Annie and Jiang died accidentally. According to him, he only confessed to extorting the family and killing them for financial reasons because he was coerced by police through beatings and suffocation until he surrendered the confession they wanted. On November 23rd, the jury delivered their verdict, unanimously finding him guilty of murdering Cheng Hui while acquitting him of Jiang's murder but convicting him of manslaughter instead. On this charge, the jury split 5-2. This distinction proved inconsequential because Shanky received a life sentence for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The presiding judge condemned Shanky's lack of conscience, calling him worse than a beast and unrepentant. He accused Shanky of concocting both his self-defense tale and affair with Annie solely to tarnish their reputations posthumously, rather than secure a reduced sentence. Interestingly, despite widespread condemnation, Shanky's family sided with him. They accused Cheng Hui of being hypocritical, a true villain who exploited Shanky financially by pocketing his earnings and using him for cheap labor. These claims sparked outrage among Pingqi village residents, leading Shanky's family to move back to China to escape backlash. This crime was among Hong Kong's most shocking incidents. It spurred an outpouring of support toward Cheng Hui's family, as many visited their home offering condolences, while netizens raised ample funds for funeral expenses. The family's 9 stray dogs also found new homes when another family adopted them, each year on July 5th. They would take these dogs for walks near their former owner's residence in Pingqi village as tribute. On August 9, 2022, at age 55, Shanky passed away in Hong Kong's Stanley Prison due to liver cancer. On April 10, 2019, 17-year-old Tristan Borlas, who murdered his parents at their family home in Deep Gap, North Carolina. That Wednesday evening, a girl called emergency services, reporting a large amount of blood in her house and 3 missing family members, her parents and her younger brother, none of whom were answering their phones. The police immediately dispatched officers to Deep Gap, a small town near the border of Watauga and Wilkes counties. Upon arrival, officers discovered blood on the stone steps leading to the house, on the porch, and on the doormats. The search revealed the body of Jeffrey Borras under a hammock behind an outbuilding, with multiple stab wounds to the abdomen. Later, around 10:30 p.m., they found a pickup truck hidden in the woods. Inside, they discovered the body of a woman covered with a blanket and bags of mulch piled on top. Jeffrey Borras, Tristan's father, was born on April 16, 1975, into a deeply religious family. His father, Pastor Harry Borras, was a member of the Conservative Church of the Spiritual Bible Brotherhood, a strict religious movement. Jeffrey was raised in an environment of strict religious discipline, constant Bible study, and moral edification. Entertainment, laughter, and bright clothing were strictly forbidden. Good deeds, charity, missionary work, love for enemies, and nonviolence were considered virtues. Jeffrey internalized these teachings, growing up to be a kind, loving, gentle, and patient individual. During his youth, he secured a summer job at a water park in Missouri. On his first day of work, he met a charming girl who would later become an important part of his life. The family was known for their strong faith and active involvement in their church and community. Jeffrey's upbringing in such a devout household was intended to instill a deep sense of morality and duty. Despite this, the family was not immune to tragedy. The events of April 10, 2019 were shocking and inexplicable to those who knew them. Tristan, raised in the same religious environment, committed an act that was completely at odds with the values he had been taught. As the investigation unfolded, details about the family's dynamics and Tristan's state of mind began to emerge. Neighbors and friends were bewildered, struggling to understand what could have driven a young man from such a devout family to commit such a heinous act. A girl named Tanya met a boy named Jeffrey. They were the same age, shared the same views, and had similar upbringings. Like Jeffrey, Tanya grew up in a family where Christian values were central. She was patient, humble, and selfless, and saw in Jeffrey an ideal future husband and caring father. She gave Jeffrey a photo of an elderly couple holding hands, saying, "One day, this will be us." Jeffrey's mother, Katie Brown, had prayed for a God-loving wife for her son, and her prayers were answered. The young lovers married and lived according to their religious beliefs. The photo was kept in the family album. Later, the young couple had their first child, a charming girl named Taylor, followed by 3 more children. Tristan was the youngest. Taylor, as the oldest, took care of and supported her siblings. She was especially close to Tristan, acting as his best friend despite their age difference. Following their religious beliefs, Jeffrey and Tanya aimed to instill the mindset of God in their children's hearts. When their 4 children grew up, they adopted 4 more boys from an orphanage. Their loving family grew to 8 children: Taylor, twins Ka and Alexis, Misery, Al, Stephen, Miku, and Tristan. The children were forbidden from using mobile phones and social networks until a certain age, and asceticism in needs and desires was encouraged. Boys were forbidden to date until after high school, and Bible study was mandatory. Despite these rules, the children grew up like any other boys and girls, with their parents showing no distinction between their biological and adopted children, giving all equal care and affection. Their home had a harmonious atmosphere, with their mother paying close attention to the children and praying frequently. The couple believed in setting a virtuous example for their children. When a hurricane hit Haiti, Tanya sold her expensive wedding ring and sent the money to a fund for constructing housing for the victims, replacing her ring with a simple, cheap one. In 2015, Taylor graduated from high school and moved to Boone to attend Appalachian State University. Tristan lost his only friend and felt alone. Although Taylor visited whenever she could, she had her own life, leaving Tristan at home. From childhood, he had rebelled against the restrictions and religious views of his parents, and he was frustrated by the ban on using a phone to communicate on social media, an essential part of modern teenage life. With Taylor gone, his arguments with his parents increased. In December 2017, the family experienced positive changes when Jeffrey, Tanya, and their children moved to a new house in Deep Gap, Watauga County, North Carolina. This house, located on a dirt road leading into the forest, was much more spacious and closer to Tanya's mother, Robin, allowing her to help with the younger children. However, for Tristan, the move might not have been entirely positive since he had to change schools. He attended a local high school in Watauga and began participating in athletics. The other children found jobs as counselors at summer camps. Despite appearances, not everything was fine. Tristan's behavior started causing problems. In 2018, the school required him to attend therapy sessions for anger and impulsive behavior. By 2019, despite his excellent abilities, he struggled with some school subjects, which worsened over time. Once a great student, Tristan became indifferent to studying. He frequently arrived late to class and sometimes refused to study altogether, often putting on headphones and appearing disengaged. Some teachers tried to help Tristan, and he initially accepted their assistance, but his interest waned quickly. At home, he continued to argue with his parents, even though he was eventually allowed to use a phone. Tristan spent a lot of time on the internet and referred to himself as a musician on Instagram. Taylor, still interested in her siblings' lives, noticed Tristan frequently argued with their mother about religious topics. She also discovered his other problems at school. She tried to talk to him, but their relationship was no longer trusting. Eventually, Tristan became friends with a girl from the religious community, Evelyn Faith Jackson. They started dating, ignoring the ban on intimate relationships, and sometimes smoked illegal substances. Tristan often complained about his mother, who discussed his behavior with him at night, making him tired and unable to concentrate at school. He worried about his problems and not meeting his mother's expectations. He felt he could be himself around his father, but not his mother. On April 10, 2019, many of Tristan's secrets were revealed. Surveillance cameras were installed in the barn, and his old phone, which he sometimes used secretly, became an access point. That day, Tanya took his phone and read messages about intimate topics and illegal substances. Tristan at school saw incoming messages, and his shocked parents texted him in the family chat about what they found. That same day, Sherry King, an English teacher, called Tristan's mother to complain about his academic performance and behavior. At the trial, she will say Tanya called her back, informing her that she and her husband would come to school to discuss it with Tristan. Sherry told Tristan about this, and he was very surprised. His parents left the youngest child with his grandmother and went to the high school. They drove home in silence. At the trial, Tristan will say his mother was tense and frowned, constantly flipping through messages on his phone. At home, the conversation lasted about an hour and a half. Tanya sent a message to her mother at 4 p.m., saying Tristan wasn't upset about losing his phone and car keys until his grades and behavior improved, and that she would soon pick up the youngest child. After that, the conversation continued. According to Tristan, he and his mother talked about studying, relationships with girls, and illegal substances. Tanya told him she didn't want him to study other religions. Besides Christianity, he was forced to listen to her and realized his many flaws. They even made a list of qualities he should develop to become a better person: compassion, honor, honesty, etc. The police would later find this list. According to Tristan, his mother approached him from behind, wrapped her arms around his neck, and he instinctively jumped up, turned around, and accidentally hit her with his elbow. He claimed his mother had never done anything like this before, which is why he freaked out. His mother, scared, grabbed scissors and moved toward him. Shocked, he stabbed her with a knife, believing he was defending himself, then ran to his father for help. A forensic examination would later find no evidence that his mother tried to strangle him. During the trial, the prosecution showed photographs of Tanya Borlas's neck with a broken bone. A psychologist testified that Tristan Borlas was mentally sane, but experiencing depersonalization and derealization. However, the court and jury dismissed this, considering Tristan a manipulator and dangerous. According to Tristan's statement, he did not understand why his father was running away or why he stabbed him, even though he begged for help. He remembered his father taking a stone and saying, "Tristan, don't do this," but believed his father would rather die than harm his son. Neighbors reported hearing loud screams at about 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday from the Borlas family's property. Afterward, Tristan returned home and vomited, which a psychologist indicated as a sign of stress. However, the jury disagreed. The autopsy report showed Jeffrey Borlas had multiple stab wounds to the left chest and back, cuts on his arms and hands, and scratch marks on his skull and forehead. Tanya Borlas's autopsy indicated several stab wounds to the left chest, back, and arm, as well as injuries likely from neck compression. The results indicated that the parents were defending themselves, not attacking. Tristan had the chance to flee from his mother, and even if he was mentally unstable and acted in self-defense, killing his father, his subsequent actions were suspicious. Tristan returned home, dragged his mother's body into the truck, concealed it under a blanket, then spent about an hour cleaning the crime scene, even using a hose to wash the porch. Around 8:30 p.m., Tristan arrived at his grandmother's to pick up his younger brother. Robin found this odd, but Tristan claimed their parents went to the store and ran out of time. 20 minutes later, Robin received a call from another grandson, complaining that his parents weren't answering their phones and hadn't picked him up from his part-time job as usual. Robin called Alexis, asking her to get her brother. They decided to meet at Jeffrey and Tanya's house to figure out what happened. As Robin approached the house, she noticed blood on the porch but thought it was from the animals the couple bred. Entering the house to get a flashlight, she saw blood everywhere. Alexis then ran in, saying she found a body under a hammock near the animal shed and saw Tristan, with blood on his face, driving away. Alexis called emergency services, and the operator advised her to lock herself in the car with her family and wait for the police. The police arrived 10 minutes later. After several hours outside and talking to officers, they went to the station and were informed that Jeffrey and Tanya Borlas had been found dead. During the crime scene inspection, detectives discovered a video surveillance system inside the house. They found the monitor broadcasting live video and requested a warrant to obtain the data from the service company. Meanwhile, Tristan contacted his friend Evelyn and went to her house. Evelyn noticed several scratches on his forehead and hands, but Tristan claimed they were from an argument with his parents and playing with the dog. Evelyn recalled seeing 3 scratches on his forehead, a wound on his arm, a cut on his finger, and a bruised nail. Following the crime, Tristan swiftly took to Snapchat, sharing a photo of his injuries, attributing them to his father's dog, as recounted by his girlfriend. She confirmed the injuries depicted in the photo mirrored what she had witnessed earlier that evening. Tristan opted to spend the night at Evelyn's residence. The subsequent morning, they initially planned to attend school, but had a change of heart. Suspecting Tristan's intent to flee his parental constraints, Evelyn extended an offer for him to seek refuge with one of her relatives, an offer he accepted. They embarked on a journey to another state on April 11th. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office gained access to video surveillance footage at the Borlas household, shedding light on the intricate details of the crime. An arrest warrant was swiftly issued for Tristan. Officer Matthew received intelligence suggesting Tristan's presence in Tennessee, prompting him to enlist the assistance of Robin for the apprehension. Tristan, accompanied by Evelyn, noticed the telltale blue lights of police cars trailing them, prompting suspicions that his parents had reported the car stolen. Attempting to evade capture, he ultimately succumbed to the inevitable, his Ford encircled by police vehicles. Evelyn's shock was palpable as she witnessed her boyfriend being handcuffed and escorted into a police cruiser. Officers observed Tristan's lack of distress or concern. Subsequent to his interrogation on April 11, 2019, Tristan, a mere month shy of his 18th birthday, confessed to all charges, leading to his incarceration without bail. Later, officers secured warrants to investigate Tristan's Snapchat account and his arsenal of 5 phones for potential evidence. A thorough search was also conducted at a residence on Orchard Road, unearthing a plethora of items. Additionally, a search was carried out on a Ford F-150, revealing further incriminating evidence. The meticulous investigation of Tristan's girlfriend's residence in Boone revealed a plethora of additional items, ranging from a pillowcase to a zip-up hoodie and a notebook. Tristan's feeble attempt at self-defense crumbled under the weight of evidence, leaving his narrative in shambles. The somber procession of Jeff and Tanya's funeral procession on April 17, 2019. With solemn reverence, pastors William Cran and Brad Gray presided over the ceremony, offering solace to the grieving hearts of the children left behind. Despite the weight of their loss, these resilient souls found the courage to compose a poignant obituary, a testament to the enduring love and selflessness of their departed parents. In the aftermath of the funeral, Taylor visits her incarcerated brother for the first time. What she encountered within the cold confines of the prison walls shattered her illusions. Tristan's demeanor betrayed not an ounce of remorse, but instead brimmed with a misplaced sense of entitlement, as he sought to deflect blame onto their unsuspecting family. Disillusioned and heartbroken, Taylor left, her faith in her brother shattered. Undeterred by her initial disappointment, Taylor returned for a second visit on May 11th, hoping for a semblance of redemption. Yet, Tristan's callous indifference remained steadfast, further alienating him from his grieving sister. It was then that the family made the agonizing decision to sever all ties with Tristan, recognizing that his presence posed a threat to their emotional well-being. As the wheels of justice turned, Tristan's trial commenced on February 16, 2022, a solemn affair marked by solemnity and gravitas. Here Tristan, faced with the consequences of his actions, expressed contrition, acknowledging the gravity of his deeds. He concurred with his family's damning assessments of his character, acknowledging the necessity of cutting ties for their own safety. On March 3, 2024, Tristan Borlas was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fitting denouement to a tragic tale of loss and betrayal. While recognizing Tristan's mental health struggles as mitigating factors, Judge Horn emphasized the absence of psychotic disorders in the psychologist's evaluation, affirming the severity of Tristan's crimes and the irreversible consequences of his actions. Although anxiety and depression can indeed be worsened by persistent use of illicit substances, it is peculiar that neither Tristan's family, nor his lawyer, nor Tristan himself elaborated on the motives behind the crime. It suggests either a lack of full comprehension on Tristan's part or a deliberate ignorance. Conversely, Tristan, a self-loathing teenager with low self-esteem prone to depression and displaying active symptoms of anxiety. Tristan recounted experiencing panic attacks, which his mother, having undergone similar experiences, assisted him in managing. Assertion that children, inherently immoral due to original sin, require correction through education and strict discipline to cultivate proper behavior, may further elucidate Tristan's upbringing. Raised within rigid boundaries, he constantly grappled with feelings of inadequacy, exacerbated by jealousy towards his parents' attention to his new siblings. Initially rebellious, he spiraled into a depressive state, compounded by substance abuse, panic attacks, depersonalization, and derealization. His resistance to his parents' religiosity, and the pressure to conform to his mother's ideals culminated in a jointly composed list of necessary changes, serving as his breaking point. Could this tragedy have been averted in a truly nurturing family environment? The case of Kelsey Turner, how a Playboy model and single mother became a convicted criminal. Boundless greed, selfishness, and the pursuit of easy wealth often drive people to commit horrific acts and crimes. The story of Kelsey Turner, a former American model who appeared in popular men's magazines like Maxim and Playboy, serves as a stark example of this. The crime she committed with several accomplices shocked the public with its brutality, ruthlessness, and lack of logic. The young woman who aspired to a life of beauty, carefree ease, and affluence not only lost everything she had, but also ended up behind bars. In Turner's case, the most tragic aspect is that the victim of the bloody act orchestrated by the blonde was a well-known and respected psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Burchard, renowned for his successful long-term practice and numerous scholarly works. He was also known for his boundless generosity. The doctor was involved in charity work, helping sick children and single mothers. His good deeds ultimately cost him his life. All the participants in these events stood trial and are now serving their sentences in correctional facilities. Let's go back a few years to understand how and why the elderly doctor, who dedicated his life to helping others, met his end. The downfall of Kelsey Turner, a model and single mother. Kelsey Nicole Turner, née Ingram, was born on March 5, 1993, in the port city of Norfolk, Virginia. She was the second child of Samantha Ingram, a would-be model and dancer, and Christopher Ingram, a simple laborer. Kelsey grew up alongside her older brother, Colin. Shortly after Kelsey's birth, the family moved to the small industrial town of Jonesboro, Arkansas, where she spent most of her childhood. A few years later, her parents divorced. Her father returned to Virginia and largely lost contact with his former wife and their children. Kelsey grew into a striking beauty with a perfect figure and model looks. School didn't interest her much. She was more into parties with friends, dating, and attending various events. She dreamed of fame, gracing magazine covers, giving interviews, and walking red carpets. However, Kelsey lacked any real talent. Her youth and good looks were her only assets. In high school, she began attending castings, hoping to become a model. Her mother, Samantha, who once aspired to be a model herself, enthusiastically supported her daughter's endeavors. Kelsey managed only a couple of shoots for clothing catalogs. At 18, Kelsey married Jerry Turner. She was already pregnant at their wedding and soon gave birth to a daughter, Beverly. Despite the arrival of their child, the marriage was short-lived, ending in divorce. By the age of 20, having given up on runway modeling, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She created a portfolio with provocative photos and sent them to various publications, soon catching the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey saw this as the beginning of a dazzling career and her ticket to the glamorous, carefree life she had always dreamed of. For a few years, she regularly received shooting offers. She eagerly gave interviews, attended events, and tried to make valuable connections. However, her career highlights were one-off shoots for Playboy and Maxim, and a photo session, an interview for 110 magazine. She traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas for these opportunities. In an interview, Kelsey candidly described herself saying, "I'm a blonde with a busty figure and a slim waist. What more do you need for happiness?" She added that she loved partying, spending time with friends, and living it up because life is short, and it should be lived beautifully and joyfully. Kelsey wasn't overly concerned about the future, frequently changed lovers, and quickly spent any money she earned or received from admirers. At 23, Kelsey became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, Josh. The child's father didn't want to marry her or acknowledge his offspring. As modeling offers dwindled, Kelsey turned to social media to build an audience. She actively managed her accounts, posting revealing photos in swimsuits, lingerie, or barely covering her intimate areas. To be fair, these images were heavily edited, making her resemble a Barbie doll. She also loved to share shots taken in fashionable boutiques, popular nightclubs, and other glamorous spots and entertainment venues. Kelsey's social media profiles created an illusion of a wealthy, successful, and carefree life. It seemed the beauty had everything and was simply enjoying life to the fullest. In reality, the single mother of 2 small children was struggling to make ends meet, but never learned to manage her finances wisely, spending any money she received on the very day she got it. Around 2016, Kelsey faced serious issues after an unfortunate incident involving her daughter. The girl was physically unharmed, but severely traumatized and became withdrawn and mute. Therapy was recommended, along with sessions with renowned child psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard, who practiced in Monterey, California. This fateful encounter led years later to a terrible tragedy. Who was Dr. Thomas Burchard? Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard was born on February 16, 1948, in Boston, Massachusetts, to a family of a well-known architect and engineer. Later, his family moved to Virginia, where his father taught architecture at Harvard and the Architectural College at the Technological Institute. This is where the future psychiatrist spent his childhood and youth. Choosing not to follow in his father's footsteps, the young Thomas decided to pursue a career in medicine, specifically specializing in child psychology. After graduating from medical school and defending his thesis, he worked as a pediatric psychiatry resident in various renowned hospitals and lectured at colleges across the country. Eventually, Dr. Burchard was employed at a public clinical hospital on the Monterey Peninsula in California, where he worked for over 40 years as an incredibly sought-after pediatric psychiatrist. Dr. Burchard had an impeccable reputation. He easily connected with his young patients and took on even the most challenging and severe cases. He earned his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. According to Google Scholar, he had over 300 scientific publications, which were cited almost 40,000 times in total, and his Hirsch Index, a scientific productivity metric, was 81. Moreover, Dr. Thomas was known for being kind, responsive, and incredibly generous. His compassionate nature drove him to help those in need, particularly focusing on his young patients whose parents couldn't afford sessions. He also paid for hospital treatments for sick children from low-income families and assisted single mothers. Dr. Burchard lived for a long time with a woman named Judy Earp, who is variously described as his assistant and housekeeper, or as his lover and even fiancée. Regardless, she knew him better than anyone else, and was the first to notice certain peculiarities in his behavior indicative of early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. The elderly doctor, approaching his 70th birthday, became forgetful, absent-minded, and inattentive. He meticulously tried to hide this from his colleagues, constantly keeping diaries and notebooks where he recorded every detail, especially names, dates, and events, to avoid confusion. He always carried one of these notebooks in his breast pocket, containing his banking details, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. Another notable aspect of Burchard's behavior was that he, already a generous person, became very trusting, and the financial assistance he provided to those in need increased from hundreds to thousands of dollars. Dr. Thomas Burchard, a windfall for Kelsey Turner. When Kelsey first brought her daughter to Dr. Burchard's office, she lamented that she was raising 2 children alone and likely couldn't afford his costly services. To her surprise, the doctor offered to help her child for free, and after the appointment, gave the struggling single mother $300 for her children's needs. The blonde was astonished, but quickly realized that with tearful stories about her challenging life, she could extract more funds from the elderly man. At the next session, Kelsey, having prepared in advance, put on a whole performance, tearfully telling Dr. Burchard about her younger son's illness and lack of funds for expensive medications. This time, she boldly stated a fabricated amount and received it in full. Kelsey couldn't believe her luck. From then on, she regularly concocted tearful stories, extracting increasingly large sums of money from the trusting older man. Naturally, she spent the money not on her children, but on her own entertainment, designer clothes, as well as visits to cosmetologists and plastic surgeons. Unwilling to return to her native Virginia, Kelsey asked Thomas to pay for her rental housing in California, arguing it would be easier to find a job there, and the local climate was better for her children. It didn't take much to persuade the doctor, who simply paid the necessary amount for the apartment Kelsey liked. There were rumors that the odd pair were intimately involved, and this was why the elderly, respected doctor indulged every whim of the striking young blonde. While these rumors might have some basis, the Men's Magazine model claimed that Thomas had purely paternal feelings towards her and her children and helped selflessly. This was also echoed in court by Judy Earp, albeit with the caveat that Turner shamelessly exploited the doctor's kindness and his progressing dementia. It's worth noting that in addition to paying for rental housing, bills, and simply handing out large sums of cash for necessities, Thomas also rented a car for the young woman. However, it wasn't a practical family minivan suitable for safely transporting children, but a luxurious Mercedes-Benz convertible. Eventually, Kelsey realized that her modeling career was behind her, her youth was fading, and offers for shoots had ceased entirely. Yet, she didn't consider burdening herself with any other job, living instead on the largesse of her elderly benefactor. Attempts to break free, blackmail, and threats. Over nearly 3 years of this peculiar relationship, Dr. Burchard spent around $500,000 on the blonde and her children. However, Kelsey squandered all the money, undergoing breast augmentation and liposuction in hopes of reigniting her modeling career. She indulged in endless luxuries, while her children were largely neglected amid her non-stop partying. This led to Kelsey's ex-husband successfully gaining sole custody of their daughter through the court, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. This left her with only her younger son, whose father, as mentioned earlier, had never shown any interest in his child. When Thomas learned about this development, he was furious, not with the girl's ex-husband, but with Kelsey herself. He realized that she was a negligent mother who did not bother to care for her children and spent all the money meant for them on her own needs, entertainment, and outfits. Dr. Burchard decided to have a serious talk with Kelsey, informing her that he would no longer sponsor her lavish and idle lifestyle. In response, Kelsey threatened to spread rumors that the respected child psychiatrist harbored inappropriate intimate interests in his young patients. Of course, this was a falsehood, but any gossip on the matter could severely damage the reputation of the esteemed doctor and academic. Reluctantly, Burchard agreed to Kelsey's terms and continued to transfer money and pay her bills. In early 2019, Kelsey decided to move to Las Vegas with her son to try and revive her modeling career. Naturally, she expected Thomas, whom she continued to blackmail, to finance this venture. The doctor rented a house Kelsey had chosen and transferred the amount of money she requested. After this, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months, giving no sign of her whereabouts. The fateful trip. In late February 2019, Kelsey Turner resurfaced as she was running out of money. She called Thomas, sobbing, and began to tell him about her severe illness, inability to work, and struggle to provide for her son. However, when the doctor refused to help, Kelsey's tone changed abruptly, and she started threatening and blackmailing him again. It's important to note that Judy Earp had long been urging Dr. Burchard to report Kelsey to the police, revealing her blackmail and extortion. Judy also suggested involving Child Protective Services, given that Kelsey, already stripped of her parental rights over her older daughter, was incapable of adequately caring for her young son. In case the matter went to court, Dr. Burchard secured support from his colleagues, who were informed about the situation and promised to back him up. Earlier, Judy even tried to talk to Kelsey herself, hoping to persuade her to leave Thomas alone, but was only met with threats of retaliation. This time, Dr. Burchard decided to go to Las Vegas himself to verify Kelsey's claims, though he already knew the answer. Judy tried to dissuade him from the trip, but the elderly man was adamant. She then urged him to take her or one of his friends along. However, Thomas insisted that it was his personal problem and that he needed to resolve it himself. He embarked on his journey on March 1st, 2019. A body in the trunk amidst the desert. On the morning of March 7th, a group of tourists traveling through Nevada deviated from the main highway onto a dirt road leading to Lake Mead. En route, they spotted a solitary Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the middle of the desert with its windows up and roof closed. The absence of anyone nearby seemed odd and suspicious. Driven by curiosity, the travelers approached and noticed one of the car windows was shattered. Peering inside, they discovered signs of a struggle, with bloodstains throughout the interior. The tourists immediately reported their grim discovery to the police. Law enforcement officers arrived at the scene around noon, under the scorching sun, and were instantly hit by an unbearable stench of decay. The source was quickly identified when the police opened the trunk. Beneath a pile of items and rags lay the lifeless body of an elderly man, next to him a blood-stained baseball bat. You may have guessed that the body belonged to Dr. Burchard, who had been missing for 5 days by that point. Judy had reported his disappearance on March 2nd when she couldn't reach Thomas at their scheduled time. She instantly feared something terrible had happened and promptly contacted the police, hoping he would be found alive. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The autopsy revealed numerous injuries on the elderly man's body, including abrasions, bruises, and superficial cuts. He had sustained several severe head injuries, likely inflicted with the baseball bat found beside him in the trunk. Part of his ear had been severed, and his hands bore numerous cuts, indicating a desperate attempt at defense. Also notable were bruises on his face with a peculiar imprinted pattern. Most horrifyingly, it seemed the man had been placed in the trunk while wounded but still alive, and had slowly suffocated under the intense desert sun. Main suspects in crime scene investigation. Since the car found at the scene was rented in Kelsey Turner's name, she immediately became the primary suspect. Judy provided the police with the address where the blonde lived and where the deceased doctor had headed, as the house was rented in his name. However, upon arrival, the police found no one there. Inside, containers of cleaning agents were scattered everywhere, and the air was still thick with the scent of household chemicals. It was clear that a hasty cleanup had been attempted to erase any evidence of the crime. The house was occupied by Turner, her 4-year-old son, and her new boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, along with 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Esherick. All had fled, making them suspects, as the petite blonde couldn't have inflicted such injuries on the doctor or placed his body in the car trunk by herself. The only person police managed to interview was Jeremy. He and his girlfriend, who had been visiting him, left the house while the doctor was still alive and unharmed. Jeremy recounted that his girlfriend had drunk too much and flirted with the doctor, attempting to get a couple of $100, mimicking Kelsey's tactics. Kelsey became enraged, accusing the woman of trying to steal Thomas from her. The 2 women almost fought, and Jeremy had to quickly take his girlfriend away from the house. He hadn't returned for several days and was unaware of the subsequent events. Police also learned from Judy that Dr. Burchard always carried a notebook with bank account details and passwords, which he often forgot. This notebook was missing, and large sums of money were withdrawn from 2 of his accounts on March 3rd. The accounts and cards were immediately blocked, and on March 21st, in Stockton, California, Kelsey and her boyfriend John were arrested after another attempt to withdraw money. For nearly 3 weeks, the couple, along with their child, had been hiding in motels, moving from place to place and paying in cash. They regretted not completely emptying Burchard's accounts initially and decided to do so later, planning to flee to Mexico with the money. However, by the time they tried again, the accounts were blocked, and the police arrived promptly. Reconstructing the timeline of events. While Kelsey and John adamantly denied any wrongdoing, a third participant in the events, Diana, voluntarily surrendered to the police and narrated what transpired on the night of March 2nd. According to her, after Jeremy and his girlfriend left, Turner had a severe altercation with Dr. Burchard, angered by his declaration that he would not give her another cent. She threatened to tarnish his reputation by spreading rumors about the psychiatrist's inappropriate behavior with his young patients. As Kelsey became physically aggressive, the elderly man locked himself in a room. John, with a forceful shoulder thrust, broke down the door and severely struck the older man with a bat, causing a massive hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana rushed in, pleading for everyone to calm down. Seeing Thomas's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, fearing the consequences of their actions. After extracting a promise from the doctor that he would tell the police he was attacked and robbed by strangers, all 4 drove to the garage. Burchard was seated in the back of the car. Kelsey then instructed Diana to return to the house and clean up thoroughly, erasing all blood traces. Diana obediently started the cleanup, but soon heard Dr. Burchard's cries and the sounds of a struggle. Rushing back to the garage, she saw the couple brutally assaulting the elderly man, trapped between them in the car, unable to escape or defend himself. It turned out that Kelsey and Kennison never intended to take the man to the hospital. They planned to finish him off using the bat and the small knife, inflicting cuts. John also repeatedly hit the doctor in the face with the handle of his unloaded pistol, causing the peculiar patterned bruises. Diana was again ordered back to the house to continue cleaning. Fearing she might be next if she didn't comply, she left the garage. While she was still cleaning inside, she heard car engines and saw the couple's two vehicles leaving. A few hours later, only John's car returned, with Kelsey accompanying him. Diana remained unaware of the convertible's whereabouts until news reports surfaced about a car found in the desert with a body in the trunk. Trial and sentence. From the outset, Diana opted for a plea deal, agreeing to tell everything she knew. This helped her avoid charges of complicity, leading to a lighter sentence for evidence tampering, which resulted in only 3 years of imprisonment. The former lovers, on the other hand, stubbornly shifted the blame onto each other. However, proving their guilt was straightforward, as they left substantial evidence in the car, and their phones were traced to the desert on the night of March 2nd, at the location where they abandoned the car with the body. Kennison was found guilty of second-degree homicide and sentenced to 45 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. The situation with Turner was more complex. Shortly after her arrest, she declared her pregnancy, significantly delaying the trial. During her incarceration, she gave birth to a girl who, along with her son, was placed under the care of social services, as none of Turner's relatives were willing to assume such responsibility. In January 2023, following her attorney's advice, Kelsey admitted her guilt and was sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole no earlier than after 10 years. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Las Vegas. In conclusion, it's worth noting that in February 2023, ABC's documentary series 20/20th Inches aired an episode titled A Model Murder, detailing the heinous crime committed by Turner and her boyfriend against Dr. Burchard. Every relationship of a person is based on the pillar of trust, whether it's between parents and children, husband and wife, or even between boyfriend and girlfriend. But if someone breaks the trust of another person in these essential relationships and starts thinking badly about them, it feels really terrible. And today's case is somewhat similar, where a boy and a girl from Pakistan were very happy in their relationship. But then, after some time, the girl breaks up because she started seeing a dark side of her boyfriend. But then, what the boy did with his girlfriend shook the entire Pakistan. Shaukat Ali Muqaddam was not only a normal citizen of Pakistan, but also a diplomat and ambassador of Pakistan. Due to this, he had to live in different countries. However, in 2021, he was living in Islamabad, Pakistan. Apart from this, at one point, Shaukat Ali had also been Pakistan's ambassador to South Korea and Kazakhstan. Because of this, he held a very high position in Pakistan. There were a total of 5 people in his family, including Shaukat Muqaddam, his wife Kausar Muqaddam, 2 daughters and 1 son. October 23, 1993, was the day when a beautiful girl was born in Shaukat Ali's house, whom they named Noor. Noor was a healthy and cute baby who always laughed and never bothered anyone too much. Although Shaukat's professional life was very busy and stressful, but when he came home, he spent quality time with his family. As a result, his children had a very good upbringing. From school days, Noor had a great interest in studying. She always used to read either school books or other books. Now, because Shaukat Muqaddam was a diplomat, he used to get transferred to other countries due to his work, which is why Noor started her schooling from Ireland. Then she completed high school from South Korea. After South Korea, the family moved to Kazakhstan, but Noor thinks about completing her college in the US, where her older sister Sarah also lived. However, after the US, Noor returned to Pakistan, Islamabad. As humble and smart as Noor was in her childhood, she was equally humble and smart in her adult years. That's why everyone at home trusted Noor and easily accepted her decisions. Besides, Noor loved animals, especially stray dogs and cats. She used to feed them whenever she had time. Although Noor belonged to a wealthy family, she never had a liking for materialistic things. By hearing all these things, you must have understood that Noor was a kind-hearted, down-to-earth, intelligent, and confident girl. Along with all these things, Noor also had a great passion for art and calligraphy. She often made religious paintings too. As I mentioned, coming from a wealthy diplomat family, parties were a common occurrence at the diplomats' homes. So Shaukat Muqaddam often took his family to such parties because they were excellent for networking and building connections. It was at one such party in 2018 that Noor met a boy named Zahir Jaffer. Zahir and Noor are both going to be key characters in this case. So before we proceed, let's take a brief look at Zahir's background. Zahir Jaffer was born in the USA, but he spent his childhood and teenage years in Pakistan. After that, Zahir pursued his graduation in the US and also spent some time living in the UK. Zahir's father was Zakir Jaffer, who was a very successful businessman. Due to his father's business ventures, the Jaffer family was one of the wealthiest families in Pakistan. The Jaffer family had various businesses, including healthcare, oil, real estate, and construction. This also provided them with opportunities to work with their country's military. One of these companies is Ahmed Jaffer and Company, where Zahir Jaffer is now the CEO, while his father, Zakir Jaffer, used to oversee the company. But after some time, Zahir's mood changed, and he started working as a therapist at a company called Therapy Works. In this company, Zahir used to listen to the children of the school and explain to them about mental health care. He also used to arrange lectures and presentations for the children. But the shocking thing here is that Zahir himself was an introverted and angry since childhood. He also had very few friends, and he rarely attended parties with them. But it is at one such party that he meets Noor, and he likes her, and Noor also enjoys talking to Zahir. Perhaps this happened because their personalities were different, and people say that opposite personalities are attracted to each other. However, both their families already knew each other because they used to attend such parties, but friendship between Noor and Zahir developed from this party. Then, after some time, this friendship turned into love, and they both entered into a romantic relationship. However, it's not like they kept this fact hidden from their parents or friends. Rather, both their families and friends knew that Zahir and Noor were dating. Both families were happy because Noor completes Zahir and Zahir completes Noor. Actually, Noor brought out a side of Zahir that no one had seen before, whereas Zahir used to be very introverted before. But as soon as he met Noor, his personality began to change gradually. He started enjoying his life, hanging out with people, and at one party, people were surprised to see Zahir dancing with Noor, including Zahir's family, because they had never thought they would see this side of Zahir's personality. Everything was going well, but as the relationship grew older, things started to deteriorate. Initially, everything was going well in the relationship. Both were enjoying themselves, and their families were also very happy. But then, after some time, a different side of Zahir came out in front of Noor. Actually, Noor later finds out that Zahir is a very aggressive and abusive man. Allegedly, Zahir had physically and mentally abused Noor several times. Not only that, Zahir had also raised his hand against his own mother before. As a result, after almost 3 years of relationship, when Noor couldn't bear Zahir anymore, she broke up with him at the beginning of 2021. In both families, there was dissatisfaction over their children ending the relationship. Because neither of them was a normal family, and in such affluent households, it's not typical for a boy and a girl to enter a relationship, break up shortly after, and then enter into a relationship with someone else later. In fact, people like them also see relationships as a business. Like most wealthy families, they marry off their sons or daughters where they can profit. But besides that, Zahir was also displeased that Noor left him, and now he took it as an affront to his male ego. However, after some time, Zahir also started thinking about moving on, and then he thought he would go back to the US and settle there because he also had US citizenship along with Pakistani citizenship. Before moving forward, quickly subscribe to the channel. This is strange. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Quickly subscribe to it. Now let's jump to July 18th, 2021. On this day, Zahir booked a taxi to go to Islamabad International Airport. Actually, According to Pakistan Standard Time, Zahir's flight to New York was at 3:50 a.m. on July 19th. He had already packed his bags and informed his family about it. But before leaving, he wanted to meet Noor just once, so he called Noor on the evening of July 18th. At that time, Noor was at her home, preparing for Eid with her family. Now, Zahir called Noor and requested, "I am leaving this country for New York, and I will never come back here again, but I will settle in the US, so please meet me once before I leave." Additionally, Zahir told Noor, "Come to my house, we'll meet, and then when I leave for the airport from my house, I'll drop you off at your home first." Although these two had already broken up, before that they had been in a relationship for 3 years, which led Noor to say yes to meeting Zahir. After that, at 9:05 p.m., Noor leaves her house. But she doesn't tell her family that she's going to Zahir's house. She just says she's going to her friend's house and will be back soon. Around 10 p.m., Noor arrives outside Zahir's house at the scent location in Sector F74. But strange things start happening from here. Now, as I told you, Zahir's flight was at 3:50 a.m., but between 10 and 11 p.m., Zahir calls his travel agency multiple times. Zahir called his travel agency and started asking them very strange questions like, "What would happen if I don't board this flight? Will I get my refund back? If I decide to book tickets again after 10 days, what will happen?" Sometime later, Zahir called his travel agency again and said that now I'm not canceling my ticket, but I've decided to go to the US on this flight. But let me tell you, during this time, Noor was inside his house with him. But for her, this house was a new place because she had never been here before. Afterward, the taxi that Zahir had booked to go to the airport also arrives outside Jathar's house at exactly 11 p.m. However, Zahir doesn't come out of the house for half an hour. Meanwhile, the taxi driver called Zahir 2 or 3 times, but Zahir told him to wait, saying, "I'll be there in just 5 minutes." However, at 12:07 a.m., he calls the taxi driver again and says, "My plan to go to the airport is canceled now. Anyway, if we leave for the airport now, I won't be able to catch my flight." Despite waiting for more than an hour, Zahir pays the taxi driver half the fare. Actually, Zahir had booked this taxi for 2,000 Pakistani rupees. Now, after that, the taxi driver leaves from there. But at 1:40 a.m., Zahir calls the taxi driver again and asks him to come back to his house. Now, the taxi driver also returns to Zahir's house because he knew he would get the full payment. But this time too, Zahir made the taxi driver wait outside the house for a few minutes, and then at 2:15 a.m., Zahir comes out with his luggage. But the strange thing this time was that Noor was also with him, and she didn't have sandals on her feet, which the driver found very strange. However, what struck him as even strange was that Zahir was talking to Noor during the car ride, but Noor wasn't responding to his words. Although the driver didn't pay much attention to this at the time, halfway through, Zahir told the driver, "Now take the car back towards home anyway. We're already very late. I don't think we'll make it to the airport on time and catch the flight." After that, the taxi driver drops them off again at Jaffar's house at 2:35 a.m. But as soon as Noor got out of the taxi, Zahir pulled her inside the house. According to the taxi driver's statement, he felt like Noor wasn't supposed to go back inside the house with Zahir, but Zahir forcefully took her inside. Then, on July 19th, Noor stayed at Zahir's house the whole day, and then July 20th arrived, which was the day of Eid. Noor had come to Zahir's house to meet him on July 18th at 9:05 p.m., but now it had been more than 24 hours, and Noor's father and mother had returned home after shopping for Eid. But when they find out that their daughter has been missing from home for 24 hours, at 12:57 a.m. on July 20th, Shaukat Muqaddam texts his daughter, asking her where she is. However, Noor doesn't reply to that text message. Then, at 5:48 a.m., Noor's mother messages her, and 2 family friends also call Noor, yet there is no response from Noor. This causes worry for Noor's parents, and they were about to inform the police about it. But at 10:43 a.m., Noor sends a voice recording to her mother. However, the contents of that recording were never made public, but it was the last time Noor's mother, Kausar Muqaddam, heard her daughter's voice. But after sending the voice message, another strange thing happens. Zahir immediately calls Noor's mother from his own phone and tells her that Noor is not at his house, trying to prove that he hasn't even seen Noor. Then, from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. that same day, Zahir repeatedly calls his father, Zakir Jaffer. However, at around 7:10 p.m., Noor is seen on CCTV cameras. But by that time, her condition was very bad, and it seemed as though Zahir had tortured her severely. In the CCTV footage, Noor is seen jumping from the balcony of Zahir's house on the first floor and falling directly onto an iron grill. This caused her to sustain an injury to her abdomen, which is why she is seen holding her stomach in this clip. She was actually distressed by Zahir's harassment and wanted to leave the house. However, the security guard closed the gate, and meanwhile Zahir also jumps from the balcony to catch Noor and brings her back inside. But as he was bringing her back, Noor falls down, but Zahir drags her inside. Now, I should tell you that it wasn't just Zahir and Noor inside the house. There was also a security guard, a cook, and a gardener. But none of them helped Noor. In fact, from July 18th to July 20th, Noor attempted to escape from this house 6 times. But each time, one of Zahir's servants informed him, and Noor was always caught. But this time, because of Noor's attempt to escape, Zahir becomes very angry. After bringing Noor back inside, he calls his father once again around 7:30 p.m. But since then, Zahir didn't call anyone for 30 minutes, because in the meantime, Zahir first attempts to shoot Noor with his handgun, but as soon as he presses the trigger, his gun jams. However, even after that, Zahir doesn't stop wanting to kill Noor. It was already in his mind. So he takes out a Swiss knife and starts stabbing every part of Noor's body. Meanwhile, Noor scratches Zahir's face and arms with her nails, but after some time, Noor's condition deteriorates so much that she faints. Noor was unconscious, but even then, Zahir kept stabbing her with the knife. Afterward, he grabbed Noor by the throat and keeps squeezing until Noor's last breath is gone. Later, Noor's post-mortem report reveals that she died due to lack of oxygen, but before killing Noor, Zahir ripped her several times. But Zahir didn't stop there. After Noor's death, he pulled out his knife and started cutting Noor's throat, and finally, he severed her head from her body. After killing Noor, Zahir quickly calls his father and friends, saying, "Thieves have broken into our house, and I need help." At the same time, some of Zahir's friends head towards his house. However, Zahir's father wasn't there. That's why he called the CEO of the company where Zahir worked, named Therapy Works, and said, "Quickly go to my house and save my son at any cost." In reality, Zahir's father, Zakir Jaffer, called the CEO of that company because they needed to erase all evidence of Noor's murder by going to Zahir. Moreover, the CEO of the company had to comply because Zahir's father was funding the company. Around 8:30 p.m., Tahir Zahur, the CEO of Therapy Works, arrives outside Zahir's house with his 6 employees. Additionally, some of Zahir's friends were also present. However, the door of Zahir's house remained closed, so Tahir took a ladder and, with his employees, entered through the window on the first floor. But as soon as they reached the first floor, Zahir attacked one of the employees with a knife, piercing through his chin and tongue. Zahir was extremely angry at that moment, so 5 to 6 people quickly grabbed him to control him. After this, Zahir's hands were tied behind his back, and ropes were also tied around his feet. But as soon as the people went inside Zahir's room from the balcony, they were stunned. In fact, there was blood everywhere on the floor, even on the walls of the room. Then they saw Noor's body in the center of the room, but her head was 3 feet away from her body. Now, everyone inside the room was astonished to regain control over Zahir, and after seeing Noor's dead body. But in the meantime, the neighbors were also quite alert, because when Zahir was being caught, he was screaming a lot, which made his neighbors call the police. After that, the police arrived there, and then on July 20th, around 10 o'clock at night, the police called Shavkat Muqaddam to inform him that his daughter had been murdered. Hearing this sad news, Muqaddam's family home was engulfed in mourning, because their youngest and dearest daughter was no longer in this world. But Noor's family knew who had done all this, and now they wanted to punish Zahir according to Pakistan law, meaning the death penalty. After that, the police arrested Zahir, but now they were worried about how Zahir would confess his crime. But Zahir did something very strange here too. As soon as the police caught Zahir, he confessed in a short while that he was the one who had killed Noor, and he had done so because he loved Noor very much. He had even proposed marriage to Noor, but she had rejected his marriage proposal and later broke up with him. This hurt Zahir's ego, so he booked his and Noor's one-way tickets to New York for July 19th. But before this, Zahir had decided that if Noor agreed to go to New York with him, they would get married and settle in New York. But if Noor didn't agree, he would kill her. However, from July 18th to 20th, Zahir tried to convince Noor for marriage, but when Noor refused to marry him, Zahir finally assaulted her very brutally. Although all the servants in Zahir's house knew what Zahir did with Noor, none of them tried to stop him even once, not even daring to call the police, because they were afraid that if they did, Zahir would not spare them. Now, even though Zahir had confessed his crime in front of the police, when the case went to court, he was behaving strangely in court. Firstly, he entered the court looking disheveled as if he hadn't bathed for days. Besides, he shouted loudly in the courtroom, even abusing the judge. Furthermore, the police had to drag him into the court and out of the court forcefully. However, he was doing all these things to prove that he is mentally unstable, and because of this, he should be spared from the death penalty for the murder of Noor. If it were proven that Zahir is mentally unstable, then firstly, his punishment would be reduced, and secondly, he would escape the death penalty. Actually, Zahir had schizophrenia, and he wanted to take advantage of it by telling the court that he is mentally unfit. Actually, schizophrenia is a serious mental illness in which a person is mostly lost in the world of imagination and knows very little about the real world. Because of this, he often behaved strangely. But when Zahir's medical examination was done, the report clearly stated that Zahir is mentally fit, and whatever he did with Noor, he did it consciously. But this made it clear that Zahir was an abuser and an aggressive person. Besides, there were many harassment cases against Zahir in both the US and Pakistan. In this case, during the ongoing trial in court, the entire Pakistan raised its voice for justice for Noor. Rallies and marches were held every day. As a result, on February 24, 2022, Noor received justice, and Zahir was sentenced to 2 death penalties, one for physically assaulting Noor and the other for her murder. Additionally, his 2 house staff, Iftikhar and Mohammed Jan, were also sentenced to 10 years in jail. Looking at the photos, you wouldn't know much, but Zahir was a powerful, tall, and aggressive man with whom a sweet and innocent girl, Noor, spent almost 48 hours. Lisa Maria Kaiser was born in 1994 in a large family where her 8 siblings also grew up. It was a large, but far from prosperous family. Parents were busy with their own problems and did not show love and care towards their children. Moreover, there were rumors that abuse and violence were rampant in the family. The story in question unfolded in the year 2020, at the very time when the whole world was consumed with the fight against COVID-19. In one corner of Ecuador, quietly and unnoticed, truly terrible events were unfolding. Here, in the small parish of Pifo, on the northeastern outskirts of Quito, the protagonist of this tragic story was born and raised. Lisa Maria Kaiser, a woman with an enigmatic gaze, whose life story became a true Ecuadorian nightmare. On that unfortunate Tuesday, October 27, 2020, Lisa sent several messages to the father of her children, David. They were words full of despair, because their paths with David at that time had already almost parted. In these lines, she confessed her love for him and her unexpected new pregnancy. However, in subsequent messages, Lisa wrote that life was losing its meaning for her, and the decision to terminate the pregnancy was inevitable. Throughout the night, Lisa pleaded with David to come to her, but his refusal was resolute. His parents also urged him to stay home, and David took their advice. In the early morning hours of October 28th, neighbors in Lissa's home heard a faint cry for help. Looking out the window, they found a woman lying on the floor with signs of vomiting. The neighbors rushed to help her, immediately calling emergency services. The doctors and police arrived and found Lissa in a critical condition, but still alive. After administering first aid, she was immediately hospitalized. However, in the house, her children, a girl of 5 and a boy of 9, were found unconscious. The doctors were unable to help them. Their little hearts had stopped beating at that point. Authorities learned the identity of the children's father and contacted David Acosta, who, upon learning of the tragedy, immediately arrived on the scene accompanied by his father. He was informed that Lissa was in the hospital and his children were found without signs of life. After several days of fighting for life in the hospital, Lissa finally regained consciousness. By that time, the investigators, guided by their findings, had presented the prosecutor's office with sufficiently convincing arguments to issue an arrest warrant for this mysterious woman. When she was released from the hospital, she was immediately transferred to a social rehabilitation center. The authorities insisted that Lissa undergo a psychological and psychiatric evaluation, as her state of mind required further investigation as part of the upcoming trial. Lissa ended up in a rehabilitation center, and doctors and psychologists took up their work. In a conversation with a criminal psychologist, Lissa opened up about her difficult childhood, where her parents fought and abused each other and their children. Her childhood had a noticeable impact on her state of mind, and moments of quarrels and her parents' divorce became an integral part of her memories. Such a childhood forced Lissa to go to work from the age of 11 to be able to study. The girl strived to escape from her dysfunctional family and build her future in a different way. The expert report also indicated that Lissa had been abused. She talked about how, after several years of marriage, David, her husband, changed dramatically. He began to humiliate his spouse and then to raise his hand against her. On the day of the tragedy with the children, investigators working at the scene found several glasses with liquid residue on the table. These finds later revealed traces of epilepsy pills belonging to one of the children, as well as other chemicals requiring identification. Police officers thoroughly searched the house, and after noticing a strange odor in the kitchen, noticed a suspicious area under the utility room. They broke down the barrier and found a lifeless body wrapped in a blanket, with characteristic signs of having been there for a long time. Later, further investigation revealed that the discovered body belonged to Jaime Yanchaguano, a 28-year-old who had been in contact with Lissa. Jaime had been reported missing by his family days before the gruesome discovery. According to Rosa Yanchaguano, Jaime's sister, he was last seen on October 18th. Rosa told investigators that after her brother disappeared, Lissa called several times inquiring about him. Lissa claimed to have received a text message from Jaime, where he mentioned that illegal substance traffickers were holding him captive and demanding a ransom of $8,000. She strongly warned Jaime's family not to contact the police. This claim became a crucial point in a complex investigation, as detectives sought to solve the tragedy and uncover if there were any other hidden victims. During her interrogation, Lissa revealed that in 2020, while working at a cookie factory, she met Jaime Yanchaguano. According to her, they became friends. Lissa wanted to return to her husband, who allegedly planned to blackmail Jaime for money. David made it clear to Lissa that if she did not help him, he would divorce her. Later, David gave Lissa a white powder and told her to put it in Jaime's food. Once she did, Jaime fell asleep and never woke up. Realizing what had happened, Lissa, in desperation, tried to win back her husband but failed. In her despair, she ingested the same poison and gave it to her children. However, the poison did not have the expected effect on her, and she sought help from her neighbors to save herself from the horror that had befallen her children. Following her testimony, investigators launched a thorough investigation, but no evidence of David's involvement was found. No one close to the couple could have foreseen that Lissa Maria and David Acosta's lives would take such a tragic turn. When they met, Lisa was only 16 years old and still in high school, a dreamy and romantic girl, while David was a strong and determined young man. Their friendship quickly developed into strong feelings, leading to Lisa's unexpected pregnancy. Although their families disapproved of their relationship, David's parents supported their son and welcomed Lisa into their home. In difficult times, David's family provided genuine support to the young couple, even inviting Lisa to live with them to ensure she completed high school. When Lisa turned 18, the couple got married. 2 years later, they were expecting their second child, a daughter. David's parents decided to provide the young couple with their own home, giving them an apartment where they found a corner of family happiness. However, over time, their relationship began to deteriorate. Both spouses were unfaithful, leading to mistrust and disappointment. Their once boundless love began to weaken. Lisa also complained of psychological abuse from David, prompting her to seek help from the police. Eventually, she was granted a protective order, forcing David to leave the family home. At this point, Lisa began to blackmail David, demanding money for the chance to see their children. In early September 2020, Lisa's life took an unexpected turn when her eldest son began suffering from seizures. In desperation, she took him to the emergency room at Baca Ortiz Hospital. After stabilizing his condition, doctors conducted tests and diagnosed a focal form of epilepsy, a severe condition affecting a specific part of the brain. Doctors advised Lisa to undergo further tests, including MRIs, and to consult specialists urgently. However, Lisa ignored these recommendations. A month later, her son suffered another seizure and they returned to the emergency room. Reviewing his medical history, doctors discovered Lisa had not followed their earlier advice, failed to complete tests, and had not seen specialists, leaving her son without necessary treatment. They warned her that continued neglect could lead to legal consequences. Despite the warnings, Lisa disregarded the medical advice. A few weeks later, after her son's condition resurfaced, she called David, who was alarmed by her serious tone. She informed him that a social worker would visit to discuss their son's diagnosis and treatment. On the day of the appointment, David arrived, but the social worker had already left. To brighten the waiting time, Lisa offered him a drink. However, as David drank the drink, he suddenly felt unwell. His condition was worsening, and the social worker had not shown up. So David decided to go home to get something to deal with his discomfort. The next morning, David woke up in a terrible state. He could barely speak because his tongue was numb. Every step caused discomfort, and his eyes hurt. His parents insisted on calling an ambulance. David was taken to the hospital where he spent several days. Tests revealed the presence of a psychoactive substance in his system, but given that he hadn't used anything of the sort, David began to speculate how this could have happened. Eventually, he speculated that perhaps someone had deliberately slipped him some substance in a public place. David was grateful for his life and realized that what had happened could have ended much worse. In early October 2020, Lisa made the decision to hire a nanny for her children. Her cousin Patricia recommended her friend Bertha, a responsible 48-year-old woman looking for work. On Monday, October 5th, Bertha arrived at the young mother's house. Lisa urged her to take a pill that she said helped prevent infection with the COVID-19 virus, an epidemic of which was at its height at the time. Claiming that it was a highly effective natural remedy, Lisa convinced Bertha to swallow the medicine and enter the house. They sat down to discuss the babysitter's childcare duties. A few minutes later, Bertha began to feel sick. She felt a headache. Her stomach began to upset, and eventually she vomited. A short while later, Patricia showed up. It turned out that she had called her cousin repeatedly, but Lisa didn't answer, which alerted Patricia. She decided to check what had happened and immediately went to her house. Upon entering, she found Berta lying on the couch, who was practically fainting already. Lisa shared with her cousin what had happened and expressed concern. Learning that Lisa still had not called an ambulance, Patricia immediately did so herself. After a while, doctors arrived and sent Berta to the hospital. The condition of the victim managed to stabilize. Doctors diagnosed poisoning with a toxic substance, which often happens when using various medications. Doctors decided that Bertha did not tolerate some component of the composition of the pills from COVID-19. A few months before this tragic incident, in June of the same year, Lissa's former buddy, Mark Escanto, had died of poisoning. At the time, the cause of his death had gone unnoticed. But now, given all these strange circumstances, Mark's case required additional attention. Investigators scrutinized the deceased's home and found Lissa's fingerprints on the glasses used the night before Mark's death. This fact added new evidence to the investigation, pointing to Lissa's possible involvement in the incident. But suddenly, a new accusation was made against Lissa. Her own family made a shocking report to the police. It turns out that on September 2nd, the family had a family gathering where Lissa offered to let everyone taste a drink of her own making. 7 brothers and sisters of the young woman, as well as their parents, drank the unknown drink and immediately felt sick. Fortunately, no one died, but the 56-year-old mother suffered a stroke. Lissa's father claimed that while the relatives were seeking medical attention, his daughter stole $1,300 from the house. Now the investigation included not only crimes against the children and a former boyfriend, but also an incident that jeopardized the lives and health of her own family members. As it turned out, that wasn't all. Investigators encountered another strange event. In May of that year, Jose Luis Erazo, a friend of Lissa's, was found dead in his home. A few days before, Jose had suddenly disappeared, and neighbors soon smelled a rotting odor, prompting them to contact the authorities. An examination of the body initially revealed nothing suspicious and was ruled a heart attack. But one of Jose's sisters suspected something strange and hid a bottle of alcohol found in the refrigerator. In addition, Jose's family noticed that some items were missing from the house. It turned out that Lissa and Jose were friends, and when the guy died, the alleged killer contacted his relatives by phone. With a distraught voice, she stated that Jose owed her a large sum of money, and she had to contact the family to repay the debt. This cunning plan did not work, and a little later Lissa called Jose's family again, changing her voice to conceal her identity. Identifying herself as Jose's friend, she claimed that she was pregnant by him and now had to apply for child support. Although Jose's family did not believe these stories, Lissa was not about to give up and made a third attempt to deceive them. She said she knew who was responsible for Jose's death and offered to meet to uncover the details. Had she not been arrested on charges of killing her own children in Jaime, the list of victims might have gotten longer. When the media reported the arrest of Lissa, who had poisoned 3 people, Jose's relatives understood. They immediately reported their suspicions to the authorities, and Jose's body was exhumed for forensic examination to determine the true cause of death. The relatives were not mistaken. Traces of poison were found in the remains of the deceased. On December 22, 2020, a hearing was held for Lissa Maria Caiza for the murder of her 2 children, whose names and photos were classified, and for Jaime Yanchaguano. The trial was conducted virtually due to restrictions related to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Lissa had been in contact from a social rehabilitation center. The prosecutor's statement said that Lissa gave her children a toxic mixture of insecticides and anti-epileptic drugs. In interrogations, she claimed that she had grown desperate and could not leave her children with her husband David, who did not care for the children. In fact, she admitted that she wished them dead. At the end of the hearing, the judge issued the defendant a court pass and ordered her remanded into custody pending trial. The children's trial next took place in 2021 at the Pichincha Provincial Court. The prosecutor presented a set of evidence to prove Lissa's guilt. Among them were statements by David, who revealed the content of messages the wife had received on the eve of the tragedy. In one of the messages, she claimed that she would take with her what belonged to her, referring to the children. She said she didn't know where her children and herself would go, heaven or hell. But now she felt as if she was in hell. Lissa added that she doesn't expect her husband to forgive her because she knows he hated her, and now he will hate her even more. David also spoke about his unstable relationship with his wife. At the hearing, the defendant's reconstructed testimony was presented, stating that she took 2 pills that day, called for help, and then passed out. According to the reconstruction conducted by the prosecutor's office, The daughter died while still in bed, and her older brother tried to take a few steps to call for help, but fell and died. The conclusion of the forensic medical examination was extremely clear. The children died as a result of a premeditated crime. The deaths were the result of suffocation caused by pulmonary edema, an intoxication caused by a mixture of epilepsy medication and other unspecified substances, presumably insecticides and disinfectant. The prosecution also charged Lissa with the death of Jamie Ianchaguano, whose body was found bricked up in the kitchen. The perpetrator was also suspected of attempting to kill David and members of her own family. The hearing raised the issue of Lissa's irresponsible attitude to her son's health after being diagnosed with localized epilepsy. The mother ignored instructions for further tests and follow-up examinations, and when the boy was hospitalized again, his condition was exacerbated by her own mother's negligence. Warnings from medical professionals did not change her attitude toward her son's treatment, leading to a threatened termination of her parental rights. Lissa's mental health investigations revealed her to be highly emotional and environmentally dependent. She sought constant attention and understanding from others and experienced severe anxiety when events did not unfold according to her plan. She also exhibited a tendency to self-harm. She attempted to say goodbye to her life at least 3 times, but was unsuccessful each time. Witnesses described her as insecure, attachment-seeking, exhibiting schizoid and erratic behavior. The findings of the psychological analysis also emphasized that on the day of the tragic events, Lissa acted with full awareness of her actions. After a long trial that lasted 10 months, Lisa Maria Kaiser was found guilty of the crime against her children. The Pichincha Provincial Court sentenced her to 34 years and 8 months imprisonment. In addition to this, she was ordered to pay David a compensation of more than $20,000. It was noted in the press that Lisa remained calm throughout the proceedings and only showed emotion when her children were mentioned. The Jaime Ianchaguano murder case, which began in August 2021, appeared to be unfinished. New details were revealed during the court hearings. Lissa admitted giving her friend a white substance mixed with alcohol, but claimed she got it from David. However, the investigation proved otherwise. According to a psychiatrist who interviewed Lissa, she did not want to take Jaime's life. She wanted to intimidate his family so she could then extort money. She did demand $8,000 as ransom. Experts called the plan disorganized, which ultimately led to the crime. In addition, forensic tests revealed that it wasn't that simple. Jaime was found to have poison in his system, and the cause of death was strangulation. The body was found with a shattered ribcage and wire around the neck. Lissa claimed that after her friend died, she decided to bury him under a back room and cement him in. The store owner's testimony confirmed that Lissa bought building materials during the days of Jaime's disappearance. After the parties' arguments, the prosecutor's office requested a new trial in April 2022. At that trial, an additional charge of extortion was filed. Lissa called Jaime's relatives, claiming he was being held by a group of gangsters, and demanded $8,000 for his release. The defense relied on the lack of conclusive evidence that Lissa was involved in Jaime's murder. Nevertheless, she was found guilty and received a 22-year prison sentence, as well as a sentence to pay $5,000 to the victim's mother. While Jaime's trial was underway, the investigation of Mark Escanto and Jose Luis Arazo, Lissa's alleged victims, was nearing completion. Mark Escanto was 48 years old, and tests conducted after his death revealed traces of the same substance that Lissa had given to her children. In addition, Mark was found to have severe inflammation of the stomach. The family's lawyer claimed that Lissa met Mark, offered him a beer, and then put the poison in the drink. A glass with Lissa and Mark's fingerprints, as well as a swab containing the woman's DNA, was provided to authorities. Alleged motives for the murder included jealousy and money. It is also known that Lissa had asked Mark to help her financially, and there is evidence that he loaned her at least $120. Mark was Lissa's first known victim. The final outcome of this case, as well as that of Jose Luis Arazo, remain unknown. They may not have been reported in the press, or the investigation may not yet have reached the stage of being formally charged and brought to trial. At the time of her brutal crimes, Lissa Maria was only 26 years old. Her high-profile criminal case has become one of the most horrific and disturbing in Ecuador's recent history. These crimes made her known throughout the country as Doña Venado. Lisa Maria Kaisi is recognized as a serial killer in Ecuador. Her victims have endured terrible suffering, and their relatives have suffered unbearable pain. The charges include 5 murders and 9 attempted murders. Under Ecuadorian law, the maximum sentence she could face is 40 years in prison. That means Lisa could be released when she turns 70 years old. It is still unclear what motivated Doña Venado to commit such horrific acts. Was her act the result of resentment for not getting what she expected in life? Many speculate that the motive was money, and in David's case, Lisa acted out of a lust for revenge, which led to the tragedy with her children. The most horrific part of this story is not only the number of victims left in the path of Doña Venado, but also the fate of 2 innocent children who could not have guessed that their mother, who gave them life, would take it away so absurdly and cruelly. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Trevone Miller. Brayla Stone, a 17-year-old girl from North Little Rock, Arkansas, was one of the most vibrant individuals in the Sherwood suburbs. Those close to her knew her as a cheerful and outgoing teenager with big dreams. She was an active user of social media, particularly Instagram, where she had amassed a following due to her excellent sense of humor. Despite facing negative reactions from some members of the community due to her being transgender, this did not diminish Brayla's pride in herself. She stood up against anyone who spoke or acted negatively towards her or her lifestyle. Instead, she embraced herself confidently and strongly, allowing nothing to hinder her path. Brayla enjoyed expressing her femininity both online and in real life. This was not only about how she dressed or wore makeup, but also about how she behaved and interacted with others. She knew that confidence did not come from holding an image others desired, but from how one accepts and loves oneself. Life was not always smooth and easy, but Brayla remained steadfast in her belief and her dreams. She believed that one day, the stage lights would shine on her, and she would stand under those lights proudly, showing the world who she was. Brayla was a strong and wonderful girl, and we use the pronoun she to refer to her as an acknowledgement and respect for her. In 2016, Brayla began an intimate relationship with a teenager named Trevone Hayes Miller. At that time, Trevone was working at a local Arby's and was just 18 years old. However, Trevone had a troubled past. He had been involved in a murder case at the age of 14 and had ties to a criminal gang. In April 2016, Trevone, along with 2 older teenagers, planned to rob another teenager named Brian Thompson, a 17-year-old marijuana dealer. The trio lured Brian to the parking lot of a local entertainment center with a promise to buy from him. Trevone carried a BB gun in his pocket, while one of his companions had a real handgun. As Brian was making the transaction, the oldest teen suddenly exited the passenger seat of the car and shot Brian in the neck, then stole $15 from him. Following the shooting, the group fled the scene. In the tragic death of Brian, we can see the cruelty and guilt in Trevone and his group's actions. It is evident that Trevone is not a good person. He is a criminal. This raises the question of why Brayla would date someone like Trevone. It is possible that Brayla was unaware of Trevone's criminal past, or there may be other unknown factors in their relationship. People have their preferences, interests, and choices, and sometimes relationships are not based on conventional standards. However, the attraction of some young women to boys with a bad past is not a universal rule. Each woman has her own choices and criteria in seeking a partner. The police found about a pound of marijuana in the car and arrested all 3 individuals within a day, less than 24 hours after the shooting. All 3 were caught after being recorded on a security camera near the crime scene. Trevone was eventually charged with aggravated robbery in a juvenile court. Initially, he faced a murder charge, but Trevone agreed to cooperate with investigators and testify against his accomplices, helping to reduce his charges. Although Trevone was never required to testify because his friends admitted their guilt, He was prepared to reveal text messages in court, showing that he was the mastermind behind the robbery plan. Despite being the youngest in the group, originally Trevone wanted the robbery to take place in an old abandoned house they had previously used as a hideout. However, the only consequence for Trevone was a short time in a juvenile detention center, while his two older accomplices were charged and sentenced and remain in custody to this day. In 2019, Trevone was arrested again for robbery and impersonating a criminal in the second degree. This time, he impersonated a security guard at a Walmart store and tried to rob two customers in the parking lot. Just a few months later, he was arrested again on another weapons-related charge. Unfortunately, these chances for rehabilitation did not put him on a better path. Instead, they led to a tragedy that resulted in the untimely death of a young victim. In 2020, Trevone and Brayla were in a romantic relationship that was sexual in nature. Despite Brayla's confidence and self-acceptance as a transgender woman, she faced discrimination and harassment. Recognizing that not everyone was as open-minded, Brayla agreed to keep the relationship private to protect Trevone. However, Trevone's reluctance to go public was rooted in his own fear of societal backlash and the consequences it might bring. Rather than being honest with Brayla about his concerns, Trevone took advantage of her empathetic nature to shield himself from potential repercussions. Brayla and Trevone's mutual understanding began to break down when she found out he was secretly involved with another. This betrayal made Brayla feel uncomfortable and angry, prompting her to threaten to reveal their relationship. In response, Trevone offered to pay her off to keep quiet. Fear consumed Trevone, leading him to think negatively and act toxically. Rather than facing the consequences of his actions and taking responsibility, he tried to cut Brayla out of his life to keep their relationship a secret. Trevone confessed to his 19-year-old mistress that he was contemplating murdering Brayla to keep their illicit affair hidden. However, the young woman didn't take Trevone's ominous warnings seriously. Assuming he only made such threats when he was angry, she attempted to pacify him, hoping the situation would resolve itself without incident. Shortly after the phone call, Brayla arrived at Trevone's house, a fact verified by a friend who was on the phone with her while she waited for Trevone to answer the door. Following a 5-hour meeting with Trevone, Brayla sent a text to her friend expressing her dissatisfaction and mentioning that they had been arguing for hours. Brayla was never heard from again after this incident. The next morning, on June 25th, a passerby contacted the police to report a dead body in a park in Sherwood, a suburb of North Little Rock. The police found Brayla's body in a black Saturn Vue parked on a gravel path near 7224 Vista Point Court, which is visible from Gap Creek Drive. At the time her body was discovered, Brayla had already been reported missing to the North Little Rock police. When the police arrived, they discovered 17-year-old Brayla in an abandoned car along the gravel path, having been shot fatally in the head. Brayla was found with a gunshot wound through the head, her body positioned upside down on the front passenger floor with her legs on the back of the seat. The driver's side window was shattered. According to police reports, there were signs of blood inside the car and a strong smell of bleach. Investigators also noticed discoloration from cleaning agents on some of the car's interior. The news of Brayla's tragic death spread across media outlets. Notably, her family requested that all articles and segments about Brayla's story refer to her using the pronouns he and the name given to her at birth, despite the preferences she clearly expressed in the years before her death. It's evident that Brayla and her family were not on the same page, and they did not support her true identity, even in her absence. This is truly a heartbreaking tragedy. Even in her obituary, an old image of Brayla before her transition was used, evoking a deep sense of disappointment and regret. Instead of honoring and respecting her true self, her family chose to present images of a past that Brayla had overcome and sought to change. This reflects the negative aspects of a society still reluctant to accept and respect individual diversity and identity. It highlights a sense of injustice and pain as a person who, with all their efforts and courage to become the best version of themselves, is still undermined and overlooked. It's not just Brela's death that is mourned, but also the sorrow for a society still rife with prejudice and discrimination. Following Brela's death, a provocative Instagram post emerged claiming responsibility for her murder in exchange for $5,000. The user, Tappan Season, even posted a photo of a $100 bill as supposed proof. However, after 24 hours of intense backlash, the user confessed that they were, in reality, a 15-year-old seeking attention and had fabricated the entire story. This reckless and inexcusable act caused unnecessary confusion, grief, and fear within the community, particularly among Brela's family and friends. The lack of prompt police action against the imposter further exacerbated feelings of insecurity and frustration. Although the teenager may avoid legal repercussions, the gravity of their actions remains severe. It is hoped that as they mature, they will come to understand the gravity of their behavior and learn from this experience, eventually becoming responsible adults who respect others and value integrity. It took the police 7 days to catch Travone. According to the arrest report, Travone became a prime suspect for the Sherwood police soon after the incident. A friend of Brela's had informed the police that Brela was with Travone on the night she was murdered. This friend also revealed that the location where Brela's body was found was a spot Travone often visited for secret meetings, which was near his home in Sherwood. Additionally, Travone's manager at Arby's quickly contacted the police after Travone called her following his shift on the day Brela died. Travone told his manager that he was overwhelmed, had messed up, and wouldn't be returning to work for a long time. When the manager asked Travone what he meant, he just said she would find out soon enough. As soon as the manager heard about Brela's body being discovered, she informed the authorities. Eventually, on August 3rd, Travone was taken into custody. In court, the prosecutor claimed that Travone murdered Brela to silence her and prevent her from revealing their secret sexual relationship. Apparently, Brela had discovered that Travone was simultaneously dating another woman and had threatened to expose their past intimacy in public. Fearing that people would think he was gay, Travone allegedly bribed Brela to keep quiet about their relationship. When he was 19, Travone was accused of the murder after he called his manager at Arby's, showing remorse for his actions. "I'm in big trouble, and it's all over for me," he said. "I've really messed up, and I won't be coming back for a very long time." Travone pleaded guilty in a deal that reduced his sentence. He was initially facing a murder charge, which carried a maximum sentence of life imprisonment or the death penalty. However, he reached a plea agreement to avoid these penalties. Notably, the investigation revealed similarities between Brela's murder and another case, the April 2016 killing of 17-year-old Brian Allen Thompson at the Bill Harmon Recreation Center in Sherwood. Thompson was found shot in the neck, dead behind the wheel of his car, by a center employee. Travone was one of 3 teenagers charged in Thompson's death. Detective Craig Grisham of Sherwood observed that in both cases, the shooter fired from the passenger seat, which prevented the victim in the driver's seat from escaping quickly. Grisham also noted that both murders occurred at locations near Travone's residence, allowing for an easy escape from the scene without detection, as stated in the arrest affidavit. Travone Hayes Miller, 20, has been sentenced to 40 years in prison for first-degree murder, plus an additional 10 years for using a firearm, following the fatal shooting of 17-year-old Brela Stone in Sherwood, a suburb of North Little Rock, on June 25th, just days before her 18th birthday. Miller has been imprisoned since his arrest about a week after the murder and must serve 35 years before being eligible for parole, which means he will be 53 years old by the time he is eligible for early release. As part of a plea agreement negotiated by his attorney, Burke Moore, and Deputy Prosecutor John Johnson, the murder charge was reduced. Brayla was among the 44 known transgender individuals in the U.S. who lost their lives to violence in 2020, marking the highest annual toll on record. Unfortunately, this alarming trend persists, with 34 fatalities already reported this year. It's likely that the actual number of victims is even higher, as some cases may have been misreported or underreported due to misidentification of the victims' names or genders by police or the media. Transgender activists, notably journalist Ashley Marie Preston, demanded attention to the murder of Brayla and urged for immediate action. They also implored the media to respect the family's request and use Brayla's birth name instead of her preferred name. Tonight, local groups are organizing a candlelight vigil in her memory at Bowl Park in Little Rock. Furthermore, a petition on change.org has gathered over 100,000 signatures. John emphasized that the tragic and often silent losses of Black transgender people, gay individuals, and non-binary persons, as well as the ongoing struggles of Black girls, will not go unnoticed, especially as we commemorate 51 years of pride and resistance that began at Stonewall. Meanwhile, mostly white reporters and media outlets led by white individuals are publishing reflective pieces that focus on the benefits gained by white gay people. Yet Black lives, particularly those of Black transgender women and girls, continue to be put at risk as people demand policy and practice changes that recognize and protect them. Following the tragic death of Brayla, local LGBTQ+ supporters in Central Arkansas came together to hold vigils in her memory. The Art Revolution Center, a Little Rock-based organization that focuses on youth, paid tribute to Brayla as someone who always made sure others felt comfortable being themselves and expressing their identities. The center invited those mourning her loss to wear her favorite colors, red and purple, as a way to honor her. Brayla's life was tragically cut short at the tender age of 17. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Young. Jason Young comes from Brevard, North Carolina, where he was born in 1974. He grew up in an ordinary family. After graduating from high school, he became a student at the prestigious State University in the capital of his native state, the city of Raleigh. And after graduating, got a job as a salesman in a large retail chain. At work, Jason Young proved himself to be a valuable and promising employee who could always be relied on. But friends spoke of him as a man who was windy and fickle in relations with the opposite sex. He was fickle and often changed women, for which he got a reputation as a womanizer, which, however, he himself was even proud of. Michelle Marie Fisher was born in New York in February 1977. She was raised with her younger sibling, Meredith, with whom they were very close from childhood. Their mother, Linda, spent a lot of time with her adored daughters, tried to support them in everything, and contributed to the development of their abilities and talents. Since her school years, Michelle was fond of law and economics, dreaming of linking her life with this very activity. After graduating from school, she applied to several universities at once, and soon received a positive answer from the capital of North Carolina. The girl diligently studied at the Faculty of Economics and Law, receiving a master's degree in this field. After receiving her diploma, Michelle was hired for a high position in one of the leading accounting firms in the state. Yesterday's student was earning well, fully supporting herself, and making big plans for the future. She decided to celebrate her 24th birthday at one of the most popular entertainment venues in the city with her close friends and colleagues. They were heartily enjoying themselves when some stranger awkwardly turned around and knocked the glass with a cocktail out of the birthday girl's hands. The guy immediately started apologizing and, to make amends, bought Michelle another cocktail. That young man was Jason Young, and the pretty young Michelle immediately caught his eye. He sat down at her table and started a casual conversation, joked a lot, tried to be witty and interesting, and at the end of the evening asked her out on a date. Michelle also liked the casual acquaintance, so she willingly accepted his invitation, deciding that it was fate itself made her a gift on her birthday. The couple began to communicate, and soon they realized that they had a lot in common. They both studied at the same university. Although Jason got his degree 3 years earlier, supported the same hockey team, and were fans of the same music group. Between young people quickly began a romantic relationship. But to live together, let alone get married, was out of the question at the start of his relationship with Michelle. Jason was still living at his parents' house in Brevard, and he would only visit his girlfriend in Raleigh on weekends or meet with her during work trips to the state capital. During one of these meetings, his sweetheart informed him that she was pregnant. This news was a real shock for both of them because neither of them was ready for the birth of a child. They were focused on their careers, confidently climbing the ladder, and did not plan to start a family yet. Jason said so at once, but after some hesitation, Michelle decided that she would not have an abortion and would keep the baby. Jason took about a month to rethink the situation, after which he moved to Raleigh to be near his pregnant girlfriend. After a few more months, the couple officially legalized their relationship, not out of love or pregnancy, but due to Michelle's lack of health insurance. Childbirth would have cost the couple a considerable amount of money, but marriage gave them the opportunity to avoid such expenses. The couple's daughter, Young, was born in the spring of 2004. She was given the name Cassidy Elizabeth. The newly married mother went headlong into domestic life and family chores, and her mother and younger sister helped her with this. It should be noted that Michelle's family coolly accepted her chosen one. They were wary of Jason, but tried to avoid conflicts. In the same year, they with a child moved to their own large house located in a quiet and landscaped area of the city. Mother Linda, who came to visit her daughter and granddaughter and help with the household, was the first to notice that there was a certain tense atmosphere in this family. Son-in-law Jason was too emotional and could potentially cause a strain right on the spot. But Michelle made every effort to resolve all the argumentative. In public, she behaved like the happiest wife and mother. Only Mother Linda could honestly describe what was truly occurring. An ominous omen occurred when Cassidy was barely 2 years old. Michelle became pregnant again, and she broke the news to her spouse, but he reacted calmly and seemed even happy about it. Soon, the family traveled by car to Brevard to personally inform Jason's parents of the happy news. They came to visit only for the weekend, and on the first day, they celebrated the upcoming addition to their circle of relatives. The next day, leaving their young daughter with her grandparents for a couple of hours, the couple went to a restaurant to celebrate the event together. As the couple was driving home, Jason, who was at the wheel, excessive steering, and the car went off the road and into a ravine. The couple were shaken but sustained only a few abrasions and bruises, and their lives were not in danger. However, Michelle had a miscarriage. Jason, on the other hand, took the news surprisingly calmly. The accident, the loss of a child, and some strange indifference of the husband, all this looked very suspicious. Later, Linda Fisher would call that accident a bad omen that no one paid proper attention to at the time. They had a mutual friend named Michelle Manny, whom they had known since their days at the same university. For some time, they did not see each other, but in the spring of 2006, shortly before the accident, Jason, during a work trip, accidentally met an old acquaintance. He told his wife about it, and together they decided to invite Manny to visit him. The young woman willingly accepted the invitation, but during her visit, she began to complain about her unhappy family life and problems in her relationship with her husband. At the same time, she constantly praised Jason and told his wife how lucky she was. Jason had frequently flirted with various women in the past, but this particular relationship quickly evolved beyond mere flirtation and friendly support. Jason Young and Michelle Manny started calling each other almost daily and secretly meeting up. Jason consistently explained his absences as being due to business trips, and his wife remained unaware of the truth. In the summer of 2006, Michelle informed her husband that she was pregnant again, but this time Jason was not happy at all. The wife did not understand what was happening. She felt that the beloved was away from her, but believed that this was due to the miscarriage that occurred a few months ago. Jason himself all this time was thinking hard about how to get rid of marital bonds with the least loss to himself. In early November, when Michelle was 5 months pregnant, her husband had another business trip. He traveled 300 miles away from home in his own car, but had booked a hotel room about halfway through the trip. That evening, a pregnant Michelle had a long conversation with her best friend on the phone, telling her about problems in the family and mentioning that she had had a big fight with her husband the night before he left. After the conversation, she went upstairs, put her daughter to bed, and fell asleep next to her. About 10 in the evening, Jason reached the hotel and, as he claimed to be tired from the road, went straight to bed. In reality, he was scrutinizing all the entrances, exits, and the location of the security cameras, planning how to leave the hotel and then return undetected, preparing an ironclad alibi for what he thought would be the perfect crime. In the early morning hours, Jason called his wife's sister to ask for help. He said he wanted to give his wife a piece of jewelry for their wedding anniversary, but he had accidentally sent a page from an online store to the home fax machine. He worried that Michelle would see his gift and there would be no surprise. Meredith, though she disliked her son-in-law, still agreed to help him. The police chiefs of Wake County received a 911 call at 1:30 p.m. from 5108 Birchleaf Drive, the Enchanted Oaks area, after Meredith Fisher found her sister Michelle lying face down in a pool of blood in her bedroom. Fisher told the 911 dispatcher that she thinks her sister is dead. It looks like there are bloody footprints all over the house, like the little footprints of Michelle's daughter. Michelle Young died from severe injuries, having been struck in the head at least 10 times during a struggle. When Meredith arrived at her sister's house, she entered through a secret door in the garage that only family members knew about, and that was always unlocked. The house was suspiciously quiet, although the landlady's papers, keys, and wallet were in the hallway, indicating that she hadn't gone anywhere. When she went upstairs, Meredith saw that the bedroom door was wide open, but neither her sister nor her niece answered her call. When she walked into the room, she was met with a horrifying sight. Michelle lay on the floor next to the bed with a fractured skull, in a pool of her own blood. Blood was everywhere. On the walls, the furniture, and bloody child-sized footprints were visible next to the body. Sadly, there was nothing that could be done for the pregnant woman, as she had been dead for hours. Her sister quickly called for emergency assistance. Suddenly, she heard rustling under the bed, looked there, and saw little Cassidy, who looked at her incomprehensibly. Cassidy was not hurt, but she was frightened. The girl saw her mother's death and afterwards spent many hours by her body, as evidenced by the marks on the floor as well as the toys she brought to her mother. Later, forensic experts found a huge number of bruises, abrasions, and fractures on the body of the deceased, which spoke of a long and brutal beating. Michelle's teeth were knocked out, and her skull was fractured with a blunt, heavy object. Later, this instrument of crime was never found. A bloody pillow was lying next to the body, and the marks indicated that the victim had been smothered with it. Nothing was stolen from the house, which means that the night visitor had only one goal: murder. In addition, the locks had not been broken, and there were no signs of forced entry, indicating that the perpetrator had a key or knew about the secret door, which again was known only to family members. In such cases, the main suspect is typically the spouse of the deceased, but in this instance, the individual had an apparently flawless alibi. He asserted that he checked into his hotel room and did not depart until the following morning, when he attended a scheduled business meeting. A review of the records confirmed that Jason had used his room keycard in the evening to enter and in the morning to exit. However, a thorough investigation subsequently uncovered a multitude of irregularities and contradictions. For example, a hotel employee discovered early in the morning that the emergency exit was not only open, but also propped up with a cobblestone to prevent the door from slamming shut. When the investigation decided to check the surveillance camera pointed at that door to find out who had done it, it turned out that this very same camera had been deliberately disabled on the night of the crime. Moreover, it stopped recording about half an hour after Jason checked into his room. The weirdness didn't end there. It turned out that during the night, a man who looked like Jason was getting gas at a station between the hotel and the crime scene, but during the night, he was asked to provide identification as per the rules. He refused to do so, paid cash, and without waiting, quickly left the gas station. The attendant at the inquest identified Jason Young, but the man continued to deny everything, insisting that he had slept in his hotel room during the night. Another oddity was that on the day before the tragedy, Jason called Michelle more than 24 times, and closer to morning, he called his mistress 5 more times, with each conversation lasting no more than 15 seconds. This suggests that Jason was probably panicking, and all of these calls were made outside the hotel, where he, in his own words, had been all night. He was also late for a scheduled business meeting with his partners, and looked somewhat confused. However, none of this evidence, either individually or all of them together, proved that Jason had indeed massacred his pregnant wife. Years of investigation and a long-awaited verdict. For almost 3 years, Jason lived the life he'd always lived. Moreover, he achieved custody of his young daughter, which was a serious blow to the relatives of his dead wife. By that time, he stopped hiding his relationship with Manny, who was once friends with the murdered Michelle, which only increased suspicion that it was Jason who committed this brutal crime. Jason was arrested only at the end of 2009, but then, despite the large amount of evidence to prove his guilt, the case failed because the jury did not come to a consensus. However, the case was reopened in 2012 when more evidence was collected, and the testimony of witnesses who saw Jason Young that night outside the hotel in different places, in particular, his rather conspicuous white car, was seen parked on the night of the murder, not far from his own house in an unlit lot, was also included in the case. Also included in the case was the testimony of a child psychologist who told of little Cassidy's strange doll play, during which the girl showed how her daddy spanked her mom, and then she would not get up off the floor. Monty took the stand as a witness in court. She confessed that Jason had cheated on his wife with her, but justified it by saying that he was deeply unhappy in his family life, as he told everyone. Another former mistress of the defendant admitted that she was afraid of his outbursts of anger when he lost control and could hit her. After a long trial, Jason Young was finally found guilty of brutally assaulting his pregnant wife. For this crime, he was sent to prison for life with no right to ever be released. In 2014, convicted Jason filed his first appeal, but it was denied. In 2018, he again asked for a review of his case, but a panel of the State Court of Appeals again denied it. Cassidy was virtually orphaned. Her mother was murdered and her father went to prison for the crime. The girl is being raised by her aunt and maternal grandparents. On November 9, 2006, the body of Michelle Young was laid to rest. This marked the end of a chapter in her life. Michelle Young's death caused a lot of commotion and uproar in the community, as the reasons and circumstances leading to her death. Both locals and strangers felt saddened and outraged that a precious life had departed so suddenly. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ronell Burns. On November 6, 2021, around 9 p.m., a concerned neighbor called emergency services to report hearing frantic screams and multiple gunshots coming from a nearby house. Responding police officers rushed to the scene and entered the home, where they discovered the lifeless bodies of a man and a woman lying on the floor. Following a thorough examination of the crime scene, the police launched an investigation into the tragic incident. The victims were identified as Ronell and Kiana Burns, a married couple. The question on everyone's mind was, who would commit such a heinous crime and what could be the motive? The Burns family resided in a spacious house in Gwinnett County, an area known for its remarkable ethnic diversity. Although the house did not appear to have been burgled, with all belongings still in their original places, the police were able to uncover a crucial lead in the double murder case relatively quickly. Let's go back in time and uncover the true roots of the tragedy that befell the Burns family. We begin with Kiana, born on September 15, 1977, in St. Louis, Missouri. After graduating from Riverview Garden High School, she attended St. Louis Community College in Florissant Valley, where she studied cosmetology and eventually started building her career. Kiana's hard work and perseverance paid off, and she opened her own successful beauty salon, which became popular. She was driven by her dream of living a luxurious and wealthy life, and her dedication paid off over the next 20 years. With time, she transformed her salon into one of the largest in the St. Louis area. However, Kiana's personal life was not without its challenges. As a strong, wealthy, and ambitious woman, she found it difficult to find a worthy partner. By the time she was 44, she had 3 children from previous relationships, whom she loved deeply. Her family described her as a great and loving mother, a supportive friend, and a successful businesswoman. Kiana seemed to have it all when she met her future husband, Ronell Burns. Ronell Burns was born in St. Louis, Missouri, on May 14, 1975. After graduating from the High School of Fashion in 1994, he played on the basketball team and even competed for a state championship. With a driven and ambitious personality, Ronell thrived on competition and always aimed for greatness. Before meeting Kiana, Ronell had 2 children from a previous relationship. When they got together, they formed a strong and happy family, bringing together 2 successful and ambitious individuals. On September 13, 2012, Ronell and Kiana officially tied the knot in a beautiful wedding ceremony attended by numerous relatives and friends. However, after the wedding, Kiana began to notice new aspects of Ronell's personality. It turned out that Ronell had dedicated his life to Jesus Christ at a young age and wanted to spread the Lord's word. He started serving everyone he could, even strangers he met on the street. Ronell created a website where he coached and preached, claiming that God spoke to him in his early years, instructing him to help people, and that he had the power to make things happen in life. Ronell continued to minister, and his video messages became extremely popular on the internet. Apart from being a church coach, he was also a financial counselor and insurance agent. He founded a company called Traditional Financial Solutions, with the goal of helping people worldwide achieve financial independence. Ronell achieved significant success in his business and efforts to help others, and his speeches drew large crowds. Kiana supported her husband, and together they gained online popularity as Ronell was already well known as a leader and coach in the 6-Figure Ambition online program for entrepreneurs. He had a substantial online presence with over 7,000 followers on Instagram and 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, where he ran. Ronell frequently described. She had built and operated a successful network of salons through hard work, contributing significantly to the family's wealth. Ronell, on the other hand, wanted to project an image of success, often posing in expensive attire. The family regularly posted photos from high-end restaurants, but in reality, successful individuals rarely have the time to engage in lengthy conversations, whereas those struggling financially were often drawn to the Burns' den, promises of easy wealth without effort, relying on Ronell's guidance. Ronell Burns established a company called 6-Figure Ambitions, allowing him to build his wealth and create a lasting legacy, which he frequently discussed in interviews. Ronell and his wife Kiana had built a close-knit family and were seen as inspirational role models by those around them. At the time, they had 3 children together, Rhea, McKay, and Ray. However, Ronell's ambition led him to suggest that Kiana leave her hometown of St. Louis and move to Atlanta. The real reason for the move was to expand their business, as Raul had taken over his wife's business and wanted to establish a chain of beauty salons in Atlanta. Owning 3 salons in St. Louis was no longer enough for him. Although Kiana was hesitant to leave St. Louis, she eventually agreed to the move. Despite her reservations, she continued to present a united front with her husband in public. On social media, Kiana portrayed her life as perfect, sharing photos of luxurious gifts from her husband, such as a Maserati Levante, and her extensive collection of Louis Vuitton bags. Each post was accompanied by captions expressing admiration and gratitude towards her husband. Kiana, a popular blogger, had built a loyal following on Instagram, where she frequently shared heartwarming moments with her children and family. However, in a surprising turn of events, she revealed to her audience that their seemingly perfect family life was not as idyllic as it appeared. In reality, she and her husband were on the brink of divorce, a situation that had developed after their move to Atlanta. In a candid video message, Kiana confessed to her subscribers that she was struggling to adjust to her new life in a big, unfamiliar city. She opened up about the difficulties of leaving her old life behind and starting anew, and how she relied on the support of her followers during this challenging period. Although Kiana's Instagram feed presented a picture of happiness and unity, behind the scenes, her family was going through a tough time. Her loyal subscribers were a source of comfort during the dark days, which had become increasingly frequent. When Kiana finally broke the news of her impending divorce, her followers were shocked. Kiana emphasized the importance of prayer and having a supportive network of love. Present himself as a successful businessman on social media, hiding their true financial struggles and relationship problems. Behind their pious Christian facade, Rael and Kiana lived a life of luxury, frequently quoting the Bible and flaunting their wealth on social media. However, this was all an act. In reality, Rael worked for an insurance company that preyed on middle and lower income families, and he even attempted to recruit his own family and friends into the scam. Their lavish spending eventually led to bankruptcy, forcing them to sell off some of their assets to pay their debts. Despite this, the couple continued to project an image of happiness and success, even considering a move to a bigger city to further their fraudulent activities. Kiana was well aware of Rael's infidelity and was tired of being silent and forgiving. Eventually, they decided to divorce, with Rael falsely accusing Kiana of infidelity to justify the split. Devastated, Kiana knew that their family and friends were oblivious to the couple's problems, as Rael had carefully concealed the truth to protect his reputation. On October 20th, just 10 days after Rael filed for divorce, Kiana appeared on live TV, looking uncharacteristically somber. Her usual bright smile had given way to an expression of concern and sadness. After divorcing his first wife, Rael Burns had remarried Kiana, a successful and wealthy woman. He had reinvented himself as a devout guru, presenting a changed and reliable image. But beneath the facade, he remained the same, exploiting Kiana's trust and wealth by pretending to be a successful businessman. On November 9, 2021, 44-year-old Kiana Burns ended her tumultuous marriage by fatally shooting her husband, 46-year-old Rael Burns, before taking her own life. The couple, who left behind 8 children, had no reported history of domestic